Chapter 13:10. Buried here is a piece of glory, a legend, a clue, and the greatest historical case in their eyes. They want to unravel it. Of course, they also want to act as an outpost and charge through here to cut off their retreat. When he heard this, Chu Feng was a bit stupefied. Whose retreat? Was it the retreat of the master of the sword radiance that had penetrated the past and present? The region behind us is too terrifying. It's to the extent that some people will come down from there in the future. Number 9 pointed towards the sky. This meant that the master of the heavenly sword Qi still had enemies? Chu Feng sucked in a breath of cold air and deeply felt that the path of cultivation was boundless. The world ahead was too terrifying, and he really needed to rise up in all aspects. It was because the road ahead was too long. The world seemed to have suddenly become vast and boundless, full of powerful creatures. You're saying that the place behind the Forbidden Land is extremely terrifying, and there will be creatures coming from those paths and abysses in the future? Yes. Number 9 nodded. Moreover, for example, the fourth tribulation sparrow race actually displayed terrifying moves known as one sword slaying 10,000 immortals, and borrowing a great era from the heavens. This was definitely not something an ordinary person could create. It was too terrifying. It was to the extent where Number 9 suspected that these weren't created by the fourth tribulation sparrow race, but came from other great realms. Even though the path from the depths of the Forbidden Land to the outside world was arduous and difficult to cross, there would still be creatures that would descend one day. They would definitely be even more terrifying and powerful. The creatures that reappeared might even be a few orders of magnitude higher in cultivation level. They were unrivaled, and this was the greatest worry in Number 9's heart. That was because according to the current situation, some heaven and earth and some worlds had opened up new paths. The paths that had previously been cut off were now going to reconnect once again. 10,000 heavens and 10,000 worlds, 100 barges vying for the current, millions and millions of races vying for hegemony, the heaven and earth in chaos, using the heaven and earth furnace to refine true gold. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Who will be the true overlord? We will compete together on the greatest stage of the evolutionary path. Who will rise up and who will be able to look down on the last? It truly makes one's heart surge. Chu Feng was incredibly excited and impassioned. In the end, Number 6's face became as gloomy as water, as if a torrential rain was about to pour down. He couldn't help but want to give him another slap. Fortunately, he was pulled back by Number 9, and that slap didn't land. What do you know? Talk about hegemony. Back then, you had no idea how much effort it took to sever these passageways. Just what kind of cultivators were needed. He had to reign supreme over the world and swallow the ages. Where else could he find such a person now? If some kind of creature really does descend, not to mention the experts from that side, even the young generation of a certain clan might sigh. In short, if a creature really does descend, it will be a great disaster. Blood will dye the starry river red. Number 9 sighed, feeling a little anxious. Originally, he didn't want to think about these things, nor did he want to look forward to them. It was because it was too stifling, truly making one feel terrified, as well as a bit of despair. When I'm successful in my cultivation in the future, I'll take a fishing net to the abyssal path and roast them all to eat. Chu Feng boasted shamelessly. Number 6 said, "Disappear as far as you can. I'm not done yet. I still have too many questions. By the way, you mentioned the bronze coffin just now. Why is it always there? Who is buried inside?" Chu Feng didn't retreat. Moreover, he was full of puzzlement and questions. He was still humbly asking for guidance. He could see that modeled ancient painting. Even though his heart almost collapsed from the impact and his soul light was still unstable, he still felt a bit of pain. However, he had indeed seen a corner of the truth. He saw some fog and urgently wanted to understand it. It's not burial, but crossing. Number 9 and Number 6 complexions weren't very good. They seemed to be very sensitive to the word burial and corrected him solemnly. It's already been buried in the coffin. Don't you want the corpse to rest in peace? Chu Feng curled his lips and muttered in a low voice. I already said, it's not death, not burial, but crossing. Number 6's old face was very dry, but at this moment veins appeared. He grabbed Chu Feng's collar and almost lifted him up. Crossing, how do I cross? Chu Feng had doubts in his heart, but he wasn't afraid at all. He minded his own business and pondered. He truly felt that these two wouldn't harm him. If they really wanted to exterminate him, they didn't have to do this. Cross. Number 9 said in a low voice. Cross? Chu Feng had a puzzled expression. Even his pupils were interweaving with question marks. He was a bit stupefied. How was he supposed to guess? He couldn't help but mutter to himself, at that level, you still have to cross? Cross the heavenly tribulation, the world's most powerful tribulation? That's not right either. Do I have to cross the mortal world, cross the eternal void, and cross the eternity of the universe? Or do I have to cross reincarnation, cross the sea of suffering, and transcend my true self? He let his imagination run wild and spoke carelessly, but it made Number 9 reveal a strange expression. He felt that this brat really had some ideas and wasn't just being thick-skinned and asking for it. Wait a moment, I saw another bronze coffin. There was a person sitting on it alone. He was very lonely, and only his back was left. When Chu Feng mentioned this coffin, he also wanted to know what was going on. He wanted to connect the dots and deduce it. Number 9 sighed and nodded there, but he immediately widened his eyes and wished he could beat this brat to death. Why do I feel like he's drifting? Sitting on a bronze coffin, isn't this a bit too willful? Then, he knew the consequences. He was beaten into the earth by Number 6 and Number 9, and only came up after a long time. He no longer dared to speak carelessly, becoming serious. In reality, he wanted to ease the atmosphere. It was because the true feeling he felt when he saw that figure was loneliness and desolation. It was extremely stifling. Could it be that this person is also transcending? Chu Feng asked seriously. Yes, he is also transcending. Number 9 nodded. Chu Feng thought carefully. That person was sitting on the bronze coffin, following the river down, passing one realm after another, watching the blood-dyed sunset, watching the blood of the myriad heavens and realms drift away in the river of time. This was also transcending? Chu Feng's imagination ran wild. Then, he thought of that empty coffin. Who was this prepared for? Why was there an empty one? Moreover, the 3 coffins used to be one. It's said that the Tao begets 1, 1 begets 2, and 3 begets all things. This bronze coffin also begets 1, 2, and 3 coffins. In other words, you, me, him, and all things are buried here? After saying this, Chu Feng hurriedly retreated, afraid of provoking Number 9 and Number 6 again. This bronze coffin has the word 3 in its name, Number 9 replied. Chu Feng was suspicious. What kind of secret was there? There was still an empty coffin left, so where was it now? He said, if there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely fish it out. I want to see what secrets it has. You don't need to think about it. It definitely has nothing to do with you. You won't see the last coffin, Number 6 said. Then, he became impatient, wishing that Chu Feng could disappear immediately. 9th Master, 6th Master, I still have various questions. Help me answer them all at once. Besides, you didn't answer the question just now. Chu Feng was unwilling to leave. These two were too secretive with him, unwilling to reveal secrets. It was as if 100 claws were scratching at his heart. He really wanted to suppress these 2 old men. Who is in the bronze coffin? Chu Feng asked. You said it yourself. It's you, me, and all things. Number 9 chuckled. How strong is the martial madman? Chu Feng asked. This question was too sudden, leaving Number 9 and Number 6 dumbfounded. They were just talking about the bronze coffin and the Forbidden Land. Why did they suddenly ask about the martial madman? This was all because Chu Feng could see that if he couldn't get the scriptures, he wouldn't be able to ask about the most important secrets. Instead of that, he might as well be more realistic and ask about some of the more serious problems of the current world. He would encounter the martial madman's people sooner or later, and they were destined to fight. He's very strong. Never underestimate that little madman. He has talent and perseverance. This time, he only used a weapon and not his real body. The Forbidden Land even sent out the physical body of a powerhouse. You can imagine how strong that madman's realm will be once he comes out, Number 9 said solemnly. He had fought with the weapon controlled by the martial madman's spirit before, so he knew how powerful the martial madman's real body would be once he came out. At the same time, in a certain area of the northernmost land, it was as if a bronze cauldron was burning and refining a living being. In the mist, a pair of huge eyes opened and closed. It was so terrifying that it felt like the world was about to collapse. In the end, the pair of eyes closed again and went silent. The martial madman did not come out. The patriarch's weapon is damaged. Is the first mountain really that powerful? It's fine. When the patriarch's real body comes out, his realm will definitely be 1 or 2 levels higher. His disciples were very confident. However, there were also some who were worried. They had already received news that the heavenly sword Qi had pierced through several forbidden lands. If the one-legged bronze spear had not retreated in advance, this place would have been affected as well. That sword Qi doesn't belong to the first mountain. What's done is done and it won't appear again. Besides, do you really think my master won't reach that point? The martial madman's eldest disciple said confidently. He seemed to know something. Don't worry. At this moment, the martial madman's voice came from the depths of the mist. It was actually very calm, without a trace of anger. However, it also made people feel as if the heavens were about to explode. There was a majestic blood qi undulating in that place. It was too terrifying. Master, can that sword be surpassed? The martial madman's youngest disciple, a white-haired beauty, asked. When I was young, my master had once pursued that realm. The martial madman said. When they heard this, everyone was stunned. Their patriarch, their master, the martial madman, actually mentioned his master for the first time. Could it be that he was still alive? In an instant, everyone in the area was stunned. Then, they felt their blood rushing and roaring in their bodies, causing them to tremble uncontrollably. What about you, master? We're still on our way, the martial madman replied. He was recovering. Number 9 and Number 6 couldn't stand Chu Feng anymore after he was banished. They had never seen such a shameless person, so they threw him out in the end. Hey, Master 9, you haven't answered my questions yet. I still have many questions to ask. Chu Feng waved his hand outside the first mountain, reluctant to part. When Number 9 and Number 6 saw that he didn't disappear, they disappeared on their own and no longer paid attention to him. In the distance, the evolvers from all sides were speechless. Some came from the major clans in the world of the living, some came from the 3 battlefields, and some came from the major newspapers. Too many people had come to the first mountain to inquire about the news, but they didn't know what to say after seeing this scene. Of course, there were also many who had strange expressions. After all, not long ago, Number 9 had personally said that she didn't teach Chu Feng anything and that the first mountain wasn't suitable for him. Was there a hidden meaning behind this, or was it revealing something? Many people were letting their imaginations run wild. After Chu Feng walked out, he looked at the crowd. This was not the time for stage fright. He was very domineering and forceful as he said, "Disperse, my first mountain doesn't like to be surrounded by people." Then, he made it clear that he had officially left the mountain. Li Su is my elder brother. Back in the day, he would beat up anyone he didn't like. If anyone showed off in a forbidden zone, he would set them on fire. From now on, I'm going to carry forward the style of the first mountain. I'm going to kill everyone in the world. This was really boasting shamelessly. Chu Feng was completely using the tiger's skin as a flag. Otherwise, he would be in danger. Number 9 had dispelled the halo around him, and the words he had said earlier might have a disastrous effect on him. Besides, he didn't plan to leave immediately. Instead, he calmly told Qi Rong that he wanted to go to the 3 battlefields and the secret realm to harvest the fortunes. At this time, he really wasn't willing to just run away. In any case, he had used the tiger's skin again. He wanted to quickly use this last chance to collect what belonged to him. Otherwise, as time passed, he might not have another chance in the future. Rumble! A golden rainbow filled the sky and silver light poured down in torrents. Chu Feng returned to the 3 battlefields with the crowd. He wanted to secretly contact some of his old friends, but he discovered that none of them were suitable. He didn't have much of an opportunity. However, he had previously made an agreement that he hoped those people would enter the secret realm. In the end, he managed to contact Fairy Qingyin through Heavenly Venerable Yushang, and they met in secret. I'll ask you again. What do you think? In Heavenly Venerable Yushang's tent, Chu Feng solemnly asked Fairy Qingyin. He wanted to make one last effort. If the other party didn't admit that she was the little Taoist's mother, then they would part ways in this lifetime. He would completely give up. He had already done what needed to be done. He didn't want these things to become a hindrance on the path of evolution. Chu Feng came to Fairy Qingyin's side and looked at her, waiting for her reply. Qingyin was a peerless beauty. She wore a snow-white robe and her fine black hair draped over her shoulders. Her face was lustrous and her eyes were deep. She was otherworldly and could be considered a peerless beauty. But now, she was very calm and indifferent as she looked indifferently at Chu Feng. Chu Feng was enraged. He thought of the little Taoist, thought of Qin Luoyin from the past, and then looked at the indifferent and aloof Qingyin. He grabbed Fairy Qingyin's snow-white neck and said, "Wake up!" Chapter 13:11. Fairy Qingyin's jade-like, snow-white neck was covered in goosebumps. She was actually being hugged by the neck and was in intimate contact with someone. The moment she turned back, her fair forehead, straight nose, and bright red lips were about to touch Chu Feng's face. A warm, moist breeze brushed against her face. Qin Luoyin's pupils constricted as a silver rune appeared on her body. Her slender body tensed up as her fine black hair danced in the wind. Her entire being was emitting killing intent as she turned from an otherworldly being into a demonic immortal in a chaotic world. However, before she could say anything, Chu Feng wrapped his arms around her neck that was as white as a swan's and spoke first. "You want to have a falling out with me? So heartless, do you really not want the child anymore? It's also your bloodline, your child, not mine alone." Fairy Qingyin's body was snow-white and her skin was gushing with divine radiance. She was about to retaliate, but her movements became sluggish after hearing these words. Her gaze was like 2 divine swords that swept over, causing Chu Feng to feel a stab of pain. She naturally felt that the other party was doing this on purpose. Was he trying to gain the upper hand by a show of strength? The light in her eyes became increasingly intimidating. However, Chu Feng remained unmoved. He wrapped his right arm around her neck and pressed his head against the other party's fair and translucent forehead. "We've been husband and wife for so long. What's the fuss? Let go." Fairy Qinyin berated with killing intent. This wasn't a simple threat. She was really going to take action. Chu Feng sighed. He had no intention of going into a long explanation because he had already said everything he needed to say last time. Today was the last time. If Qin Luoyin's reincarnation was the same as before and hadn't changed, he would give up completely and say nothing more. His eyes shone brightly as he said in a deep voice, "I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to abandon everything in the lesser Yin realm? Are you going to leave me and that child?" Fairy Qingyin's hair fluttered in the wind, sparkling and resplendent. Her beautiful eyes were like rainbows, shooting out beams of light that caused others to feel fear. Her flawless face was filled with coldness, unmoved. She was still cold and resolute as she said, "I'll say it one more time. Let go." "This is your final decision?" Chu Feng was annoyed. "I've said everything I need to say last time," Qin Luoyin muttered coldly. Then, she suddenly raised her head and distanced herself from Chu Feng's face. Her expression became even more resolute. Chu Feng's face was ashen, and his killing intent surged. He thought of what Qin Yin had said last time. Having someone you liked was a legend among legends in prehistoric times, and it was impossible for her and Chu Feng to be together. The Qin Yin before him was just like the last time, very indifferent and very resolute. Her attitude and words had already made it clear that she would not change her mind. "I'll get rid of that person sooner or later," Chu Feng said coldly. Fairy Qingshi said calmly, "You won't have that chance. You'd better leave this place as soon as possible. I know you have nothing to do with the first mountain." Obviously, she had already heard about what had happened at the first mountain. Moreover, she was the reincarnation of the ancient dream paths goddess from prehistoric times and understood the ins and outs of the first mountain. That was why she had determined that Chu Feng was not a disciple of the first mountain. In reality, the outside world also suspected that the conversation between number 9 and number 6 had disintegrated many of the halos on Chu Feng's body. "In this life, I'm no longer Qin Luoyin. I'm Qin Yin. The lesser underworld is but a very short part of my life. The sea has turned to dust, and the past is like smoke. I wish you a smooth journey. Go." Fairy Qingyin's body glowed. Her body left her body and hovered in the middle of the golden tent. Without a doubt, she had awakened some divine abilities from prehistoric times in this life. She would go incomparably far on the path of evolution. She wanted to transcend and become an ultimate evolver. The current her was already very powerful. "If that child can appear again and if he's in trouble, you can find me. I'll go and save him." This was her final promise. After hearing these words, Chu Feng no longer had any physical contact with her. He directly let go of her and stood in the middle of the tent. He recovered his cold demeanor and said, "There's no need. If I really find him one day, I can take care of myself and protect him for the rest of his life. No one will be able to touch him." Fairy Qinyin said, "Go. If people find out that you're not directly related to the first mountain, you'll be in great danger. You won't be able to walk out of this battlefield." Now, she and Chu Feng were only a foot apart. It was as though they were separated by the ends of the earth and extremely far. "I wasn't able to reach this step because of my relationship with anyone. I can rise to power on my own and break all kinds of myths." Chu Feng turned around and left. He had said all that he needed to say. For the sake of the little Taoist and the friendship of the lesser underworld, he had already made his last effort and didn't want to continue. Chu Feng walked out of the tent. Yu Shang appeared and said with a sigh, "It's very complicated, but are you going to give up just like that?" "Yes." Chu Feng nodded. But in the end he stopped and said, "She's no longer the person I want to see." Heavenly Venerable Yu Shang sighed. He didn't have any suggestions on this matter and wouldn't give any opinions. However, he stopped Chu Feng and asked him to wait for a moment and not leave. At this time, Fairy Qinyin walked past and drifted away. "You're not going to ask me to stay just like that?" Yu Shang spoke again. He was an experienced person and was afraid that Chu Feng would leave behind regret. Chu Feng shook his head and said, "There's no need now. In the end, I'm still not strong enough. One day, when I can suppress a legend among legends with a raise of my hand, what can't be reversed? If I'm strong enough, I can naturally awaken her in the lesser underworld and make her reappear. Forget it, let's just walk our own paths. It's also good to let go like this. My Tao heart is becoming more and more firm. This time, I'll ride the wind and break the waves, the Koan Pung spreading its wings to break the universe." Then, he revealed a puzzled expression and asked Heavenly Venerable Yu Shang why he was asked to stay. "I want to give you an artifact." Yu Shang made such a decision after thinking for a long time. This was a thought he had had in the past. He didn't have much time left and was prepared to give that ancient artifact to Chowda. Chu Feng revealed a surprised expression. Seeing him so serious, what was that artifact? However, he immediately understood the old man's mentality. He felt that he couldn't make it any more and his life was about to dry up. This was the artifact he entrusted to Chu Feng before he died. Chu Feng said, "Senior, you'll be fine. I'll find rare medicines that can extend your lifespan for you." He knew that ordinary medicinal herbs were ineffective for Yu Shang. He needed rare and precious materials. "It's useless. I understand my own situation. Perhaps I only have 1 or 2 months before I return to ashes, dust to dust." He sighed. At this time, his hair was white, his face was full of wrinkles, and his eyes were muddy without luster. Although he was a heavenly venerable, his life was full of ups and downs. His 3 children died early, and his only grandson also died. And these few descendants all had astonishing talent. For example, they had charged into the top 3 rankings of the Yang Realm's divine kings. Unfortunately, they all died young. Although Heavenly Venerable Yu Shang didn't have any evidence, his intuition told him that his daughter and his eldest son were killed by someone. This was the pain of his life. His entire life was gloomy and full of suffering. There was no happiness or light to speak of. As a Heavenly Venerable, he actually didn't have a single heir. He didn't leave behind any descendants. The few disciples he had were also dismissed by him for fear of accident. But after that, he also heard grievous news. Some of his disciples also died and were erased. All of this was because someone coveted an ancient artifact in Heavenly Venerable Yu Shang's family and wanted to take it for himself. At the same time, he didn't want to make it public and let the whole world know. When Yu Shang talked to Chu Feng, he was secretly transmitting his voice. Even so, he was still a little worried. He was afraid that he would harm Chu Feng. The only thing that made him slightly at ease was that the first mountain had just slashed out a sky-piercing sword chi and pierced through a few forbidden lands. It was precisely the time to intimidate the world. Even if someone had locked onto him in the dark, he reckoned that they might have temporarily left now. Heavenly Venerable Yu Shang had a feeling that his entire body seemed to have become much more relaxed. It was as if an invisible mountain in the dark had been moved away from his body. When he said these things, Chu Feng was deeply shocked. Some terrifying force had always been coveting the artifact of Heavenly Venerable Yu Shang's family and had even been monitoring him all these years? At the same time, Chu Feng was also puzzled. Instead of that, they should just directly make a ruthless move and capture Heavenly Venerable Yu Shang. Yu Shang said, "They don't dare because my ancestor has set up a restriction in the depths of my soul light. There's already no way to undo it. If there's the slightest accident, the clue will disappear from my soul, and I'll never be able to find that artifact again." Chu Feng became more and more apprehensive. Just what kind of artifact was it that actually required such a large force? It's an artifact that has only appeared in legends and is believed to be impossible to exist. It once suppressed the heavens with a single artifact. Even though it has long been forgotten by people in many eras, and even in this era, once it appears, it will still illuminate the heavens and myriad realms. At this point, Heavenly Venerable Yu Shang's eyes flickered with astonishing brilliance. All of his sufferings, all of his setbacks, and the gloominess of his life dispersed at this moment. It was as if he had obtained some vitality, and some vitality. Chu Feng was greatly shocked. Just what kind of artifact was that? No wonder people coveted it. If it really was so extraordinary, even old monsters that had been in slumber for who knew how many eras would awaken and rush out of their coffins. "Senior, I can't accept this kind of thing. Just leave it. I'll find a great medicine for you and let you live for another 10,000 years. Yushang was bitter. He thought of his heaven-warping eldest son, then he thought of the divine king's daughter that swept through the world, and then he thought of his only bloodline, that grandson. All of them had passed away, and their deaths were unclear. He felt that his life should have ended a long time ago. There was no happiness to speak of, and his entire life was spent in pain. He chewed on sorrow amidst torment and loneliness, sinking into the darkness. If I don't give it to you, I'll really have to bring the final clue of that artifact into the coffin. This object can't be lost. Some people say that it's even more important than most of the Yang realm. Heavenly Venerable Yushang sighed. In the end, Chu Feng no longer refused. However, he still wanted to arouse the old man's will to live. He couldn't just pass away in meditation like this and die silently like this. Senior, just who was the one that harmed your clan? Don't you want to take revenge for your children? Chu Feng asked. Yushang shook his head. He felt dejected and defeated as he said, I can't see the slightest bit of hope. Even if I cultivate for 1,000 lifetimes, I still won't be their opponent. I won't be able to take revenge. Chu Feng frowned and said, just who is it? Could it be that they are even more formidable than the martial madman? Chapter 13:12. It was obvious that Yushang's ancestor had a great background. This clan used to be glorious, but their inheritance declined later on. Many people had their eyes on the secret weapon that was guarded and hidden within the clan. At this moment, Chu Feng still did not know what it was, nor did he know who his enemy was. In fact, he wanted to know more about his enemy. What kind of background did he have? How terrifying was he? Was he stronger than the martial madman? According to the known information, this was definitely a legend among legends. He was a monster from prehistoric times who was on par with Li Su. Otherwise, how could he be like this? However, Yushang did not say much. No matter how many times Chu Feng asked, he did not tell him who that person was. I am worried that if I mention that clan, the existence in the underworld will sense it and I will implicate you. Yushang's voice was weak. His hair was white and his eyes were dim and turbid. His current state made Chu Feng's heart ache. His life was simply too miserable. His daughter, eldest son, and a few other relatives had all been killed. Now, he was alone with no one to rely on. He was so haggard, melancholic, and miserable. At the same time, Chu Feng was also very apprehensive. Just what level of enemy was this? Just what kind of terrifying creature was it that it could sense just by saying its name? Yushang urged him to be on high alert and prepare to collect a secret map. Chu Feng was startled. There was a need to muster so many people just to collect a map? This must be that secret weapon. This is a spiritual imprint passed down in the past. It hides clues to that secret weapon. Yushang's expression was incomparably solemn as he asked Chu Feng to accept it with his mind. This matter was of great importance because his ancestor's spiritual imprint was engraved in his mind. Outsiders could not explore it, and if they tried to forcefully take it, his sea of consciousness would collapse. Chu Feng pondered. If Yushang passed down this imprint, he reckoned that the last of his spiritual sustenance would be gone and his life would come to an end. Chu Feng refused again and told Elder Yushang to keep it for himself. One day, he would be able to see the light of day and take revenge. Since this was a secret artifact that made even unmatched experts' eyes red, coveting it from the ancient times until now, if there was a day when Yushang dug up this secret artifact, he might be able to use it to suppress and kill a great enemy. You don't have to worry about me. This is a rare opportunity. The reason why I gave it to you is that this spiritual imprint doesn't repel you. Instead, it feels somewhat close to you. In all these years, apart from those who have the blood of my race flowing through their veins, this kind of thing rarely happens. Yushang actually said these words. Moreover, he understood Chu Feng's intentions. He was telling him that he would not die, and that he had to work hard to survive until the day the light of dawn appeared. Chu Feng sighed lightly and felt sad for him. At the same time, he was also very confused. Why didn't the spiritual imprint on Yushang's ancestor reject him? Actually, Yushang had his doubts as well. In the end, he thought of a legendary possibility. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Perhaps someone from your clan had some dealings with our clan in the past and received the baptism of our clan's true blood." This left Chu Feng stunned and deeply puzzled. Yushang explained that their clan was extremely unordinary. Even they themselves felt mysterious. It was rumored that their clan would occasionally produce people with extremely special bloodlines. Their blood would mysteriously be activated into a different state, turning into an unmatched great medicine that could baptize all creatures. When he heard this, Chu Feng was deeply shocked. What kind of constitution was this? What kind of true blood was this? It could actually be like this. It was too shocking. This type of blood was extremely special and legendary. It was also extremely mysterious, to the extent where it could even be said that after baptizing another's flesh, it could promote a mutation, and then be contaminated with a bit of this blood's characteristics. When Chu Feng heard this, he was a bit stupefied. There was actually such a miraculous blood in this world? It was too mysterious, making one feel that it was inconceivable. He didn't even need to think about it to know that Yushang's clan's ancestor was even more mysterious and powerful than what he had imagined. Otherwise, why would the blood of the occasional clansman be like this? Yushang sighed. In reality, even he was deeply suspicious when he heard this rumor. He felt that it was unimaginable, feeling that it was a bit abnormal and powerful. Even the clansmen themselves felt that it was a little like an unimaginable and bizarre legend. But this was the truth. Their clan had records and some evidence was left behind. Therefore, he was suspecting that Chu Feng's ancestor had friendly relations with this clan and had received baptism, causing Chu Feng's clan to be contaminated with a certain characteristic that made that spiritual imprint feel intimate. This shouldn't be possible. Chu Feng shook his head because he wasn't someone from the Yang realm at all. He shouldn't have any dealings with Yushang's clan. He didn't avoid it and didn't conceal it. He directly said that he came from the Little Yin realm because he didn't hide it from Elder Yushang when he conversed with Qing Yin. And recently, Yushang had always been protecting him and ensuring his safety. He had nothing to hide. Yushang had long since calmed down apart from his earlier shock. Which evolver didn't have their own secrets? Especially those who could become great saints, they were naturally extraordinary. Yushang was a celestial being from the Yang realm. His ancestor was even more mysterious, so he naturally knew many secrets. He wasn't unfamiliar with the various sayings of reincarnation. Perhaps your ancestor was someone from the Yang realm? Yushang said. Chu Feng shook his head. This wasn't very likely. There was a saying that the creatures in the Little Yin realm were the remains buried in the Yang realm and were resurrected. Some creatures from the Yang realm were once very arrogant and said that the Little Yin realm was a mass grave left behind by the Yang realm in the past. Some corpses were intelligent and gradually revived, giving birth to some clans. This kind of saying naturally made the people of the Little Yin realm feel even more humiliated. At this moment, Chu Feng's heart stirred and some thoughts suddenly sprang up in his mind. Senior, are you sure that you're the only one left in your clan? Are there any blood relatives or descendants who have entered the Little Yin realm? When he said this, his heart jumped because he thought of some possibilities that might give hope to Yushang, who didn't have much life left. No, I'm the only one left. Everyone else is dead. They either died accidentally or inexplicably, just like my daughter and eldest son. Yushang's heart ached. An incomparably glorious clan with a great background was actually going to be completely annihilated today. Their bloodline inheritance was severed and there were no descendants left. Senior, perhaps you don't know. What if there was a descendant who left a bloodline outside and I happened to meet him? I was stained with his true blood. At this time, Yushang hesitated because he thought of some things and heard some very cruel truth. He also suspected that there were descendants wandering outside. My only grandson, according to reports, might have a posthumous child. When Yushang mentioned this matter, turbid old tears almost flowed down his face. He was incomparably sad. Back then, he went to search and pursue, but he was obstructed by a hostile clan. His grandson's Dao companion was kidnapped and the unborn posthumous child disappeared along with her. But later, Yushang heard that the posthumous child had grown up and had descendants who were raised scattered. However, the final outcome was extremely miserable. That enemy not only coveted their clan's secret artifact, but also wanted to study the rare true blood that occasionally appeared within their clan. They were subjected to all types of experiment. It was extremely cruel and lamentable. I heard that they all died in the end. Yushang's old eyes were turbid and his heart felt suffocated. He was powerless to reverse the situation and couldn't change anything. Everything was because the enemy and the enemy's clan were too powerful. Chu Feng didn't have the heart to tear open the old man's scars, but because of certain reasons, he still wanted to ask what those scattered descendants experienced. It was because he felt that there was a possibility that might be true. For example, they used their fresh flesh to nourish the evil blood left behind by the great evil spirits, causing their bodies to rot and turn into a pool of blood. For example, because they knew that the occasionally produced true blood of my clan was special, they stimulated its body and even planted a mother gold seed in order to nurture an extraordinary mother gold. Stop. When Chu Feng heard this, he was shocked. It finally matched up. His suspicions had come true. Senior, you still have descendants. I have seen them, Chu Feng said excitedly, wanting to tell Yushang the truth. Yao Yao's grandfather was like this in the lesser Yin realm and on Earth. There was a mother gold growing in his body. This was a seed planted by someone back then. The most important thing was that Yao Yao's grandfather came from the Yang realm and fled to the lesser Yin realm. The old man Yushang was too pitiful, lonely, and miserable. If he knew that there were descendants in the lesser Yin realm and that their clan's bloodline hadn't been severed, he would certainly be incomparably excited and happy. But in a split second, when he thought of Yao Yao's end, Chu Feng became somewhat silent. He was extremely nervous, anxious, and pained. That was because the last time he and Yao Yao parted ways was in the abyss. She sank and never came back up. On that day, Chu Feng's physical body disintegrated, leaving behind only a remnant of his soul and blood. Yao Yao carried a stone jar out from the depths of the dark abyss, while she herself sank. Old Taiwu bastard! When he thought of this, Chu Feng's heart was filled with hatred and pain. Back then, Taiwu Tianzuan's Dao body descended into the lesser Yin realm and caused all of this. Was Yao Yao still there? Could she still survive? At the same time, Chu Feng also understood why the imprint in Yushang's body felt so close to him. It was because he had been stained with Yao Yao's blood. Back then, when Yao Yao sent him out of the abyss, she coughed up blood continuously, staining his soul light and blood. It seemed that Yao Yao had given birth to that kind of extremely special blood. It was supreme blood. If she came to the Yang realm and grew up, how powerful would she be? Chu Feng also understood why Yao Yao was called the number one under the starry skies in the ancient lesser Yin realm. This wasn't without reason. She was truly blessed by the heavens. She was in an incomplete world with imperfect laws, but she could fight against Taiwu and kill evil people in the Yang realm. There was a reason why she could be so heaven-defying. You said I have descendants. Where are they? Yushang was trembling and his lips were trembling. His greatest regret in this life was that he couldn't protect his daughter, eldest son, and only grandson. His descendants were all blessed by the heavens, but they were all dead. They were harmed and made him unhappy for the rest of his life. He lived in self-blame and torment. There was no light in the sky of his life, and the whole world was gray. His heart was filled with grief. How could he not be excited after hearing this news? Chu Feng hesitated slightly but still told the truth and told him the details. In the end, after careful consideration, he believed that Yao Yao might not have died in the abyss. Perhaps she had other encounters. I believe she's still alive and will reappear in the world sooner or later. If she doesn't appear, I'll definitely go find her. I'll enter the abyss and save her. Chu Feng swore a blood oath. His heart trembled and ached every time he thought of Yao Yao. He absolutely couldn't allow her to disappear from the world forever. At the same time, he told Elder Yushang that Yao Yao's grandfather was definitely still alive. Back then, Chu Feng had personally hidden Yao Yao's grandfather, who had lost himself in the depths of a planet. But after something happened to Yao Yao, her grandfather broke free from the seal and killed his way out. He roared like a wounded beast and disappeared without a trace. Chu Feng seriously suspected that Yao Yao's grandfather had recovered some of his consciousness. He might have mixed into the Yin realm seed and followed the people from the Yang realm to the Yang realm. Yushang trembled. He might have descendants and a bloodline inheritance. He let out a deep roar with tears streaming down his old face. He was both sad and happy. He almost shouted out loud, but he was forcefully restraining himself. His face was full of hot tears. Legend has it that our clan has a great origin. Our bloodline is only the weakest. The truly powerful ones have all disappeared and gone on expeditions. Yushang murmured and spoke of an even more ancient past. Because their clan was relatively weak, they were in charge of guarding that ancient artifact. Even so, they were incomparably powerful compared to other races. But if the other branches of their ancestors were still around, that terrifying creature who coveted their clan's secret artifact would definitely not dare to make a move and would hide as far away as possible. Unfortunately, the clan's history was too long ago. Almost no one believed that there were other branches with incomparably glorious past. Now, only Yushang's branch was left, and it was about to be exterminated. Yushang believed that only people like Yao Yao, who occasionally reappeared with a heaven-defying bloodline, could embody the glory of their ancestors. That was the style their clan should have. Get ready. I'll pass you the brand diagram, said Yushang. He wanted to give Chu Feng a big gift. I don't want it. I'll wait for Yao Yao to come back. Chu Feng shook his head. Take it first. I have one foot in the grave. Accidents might happen at any time. If I lose this brand diagram in my hands, I'll be a sinner, said Yushang. If you have the heart, you can comprehend it with her if Yao Yao reappears one day. Okay. In the end, Chu Feng nodded solemnly. Moreover, he encouraged Yushang once again to live on and wait for the day he could meet Yao Yao again. Chi. The space between Yushang's brows shone. Some kind of spiritual imprint blossomed and a hazy pattern emerged. It was about to fly toward Chu Feng. What did he see? In that secret diagram, a mysterious yellow gas emerged. It originated from an artifact and was surging with primal chaos. However, that artifact's pattern was too vague and hazy. He couldn't see it clearly. But during this process, he saw other familiar things. Chapter 13:13. There were 3 seeds. How could it be them? There was no way Chu Feng would make a mistake. He was too familiar with them. Right now, they were on him, stored in the stone container. The 3 seeds were all dyed in blood, carrying a bright red color. They slid out from the mysterious yellow energy falling out from that artifact. Chu Feng's mind immediately became highly concentrated, his heart pounding. He wanted to know what happened endless years ago, in an unknown era, perhaps even an unknown great era, what these 3 seeds experienced, what kind of origins they had, what kind of roots they had. They were too mysterious. The reason why Chu Feng could step on the path of evolution was all related to them, thus allowing him to rise up. However, it was quite a pity. After the 3 seeds fell out from the artifact suffused with mysterious yellow energy, they began to accelerate, breaking through the restrictions of the void, directly flying away. Chu Feng was shocked. What kind of situation was this? In the back, mysterious yellow energy surged, continuously surging. That secret artifact seemed to be shaking, to the extent where it even released a heaven-shocking sound, making the great Tao of heaven and earth collapse, as if it wanted all creatures from past, present, and future to bow down. This was a type of unmatched great power. What kind of artifact was this exactly? It was rumbling, shaking endlessly. Mysterious yellow energy surged, becoming the source of all life source energy, surging into the heavens, as if it was going to wreak havoc in all worlds. That artifact wanted to collect the 3 seeds, but in the end, it gave up. Hong Long. Mysterious yellow source energy rumbled. It was clear that something unforeseen was happening behind it, something unexpected happening. With a Hong sound, it shook intensely. In that instant, 10,000 whales were completely suppressed by it. It released special ripples, sweeping through the heavens and 10,000 worlds. Then, everything became temporarily quiet. There was blood that flowed, falling from primal chaos, extremely bleak. It scattered down from the mysterious yellow source energy, the bright red color dazzling. In a daze, the heavens all became still, past, present, and future all pierced through. The mysterious ancient artifact that looked like it was still, in reality, there was an unpredictable and terrifying great event happening behind it, one that might be able to change the past, present, and future. Chu Feng's eyes widened in shock, and he held his breath. He wanted to take a closer look, afraid that he would miss something. He had a feeling that this was a huge storm. However, all of this was blocked by this ancient artifact. It seemed to have cut off an expanse of ancient history, a period of time, an entire great era, blocking all of the bad things behind it. Finally, Chu Feng vaguely saw a corner of the truth. He saw some dim figures. It was a primeval battlefield, a boundless world, a tempestuous storm, and a single wave was sufficient to sweep through an expanse of the universe and collapse an epoch. That was an unimaginably extreme battle. He saw the collapse of the starry sky, saw the end of great eras. He saw someone ring a bell, the ripples sweeping through 10,000 immortals. He saw someone using source chi to cut off the past and present. He saw a figure dressed in white that was as beautiful as a painting. She looked down on all the ages, looking down on all the realms of the heavens. Her style was exceptional. He saw a grand divine image that occupied half the cosmos that didn't conform to the natural laws of the heavens collapse. Then, endless gray mist rushed out, wreaking havoc everywhere. Between heaven and earth, within the dust-covered ruined cosmos, the endless human figures all cracked apart and then exploded. Creatures struggled free and slaughtered their way out. Black blood flowed, making the entire cosmos deathly still and withering away. This wasn't the matter of a single world, not a battle of a single great era. They came one after another. In the end, endless light erupted. Behind the realms of the heavens, all types of brilliance surged. The heavens above split apart, something descending. Was someone traveling through the past, present, and future? Chu Feng couldn't see it anymore. Those scenes were a bit horrifying. What he saw was only a corner of the land, and it wasn't the final decisive battle, not the final bloody struggle of the higher levels. Dusk covered everything, making it hard to see clearly. An ancient path vaguely appeared. Chu Feng felt that it was familiar, like the reincarnation path. It passed through several great eras. In the end, it was a cold and brilliant redness. Specks of blood streaked across, immediately rushing over. It was as if they were suddenly reflected in the spectators' eyes, leaving them shaken. Chu Feng seemed to have seen some ancient cosmos collapse, saw many experts fall. His breathing almost stopped. He did everything he could to see everything through the mist. There was only a cold and brilliant redness in his eyes. His ears seemed to have heard a funeral song. There was a bell that exploded, a figure that had its back towards him falling down. Then, he saw white clothes fluttering about, the figure of a woman with unmatched style. She was like an emperor descending into the endless ages, slowly disappearing into the distance, treading on the sky. Her body was dyed in blood, extremely lonely. In the end, there was only mysterious yellow energy flowing, originating from that artifact. At the same time, there was dazzling blood that streaked across that space. Now, everything became deathly still, motionless. All of the scenes froze. Mysterious yellow essence, all life source energy. Yushang sighed softly, subconsciously saying this. Then, he was freed. The spiritual imprint was completely separated from the space between his eyebrows and flew out, disappearing into Chu Feng's skull. Yushang was somewhat at a loss, because a portion of his memory was stripped away. He forgot the main information regarding this ancient artifact. The imprint was just this tyrannical. When that spiritual imprint was separated, it erased the main clues left in Yushang's mind. What is that? Chu Feng's voice was trembling. He felt that he should have seen incomparably important information left behind by the predecessors, related to the great changes of the past, present, and future. However, he couldn't understand it, the level was still not high enough. Yushang was absent-minded, thinking for a long time before saying, "I don't know, this is a segment of imprint, you need to comprehend it yourself." Vaguely, that scene seems to have the approximate final coordinates of the secret artifact. Chu Feng calmed his mind and then looked again. Later on, he no longer stared at the mysterious yellow energy, but instead looked at his surroundings. There seemed to be an expanse of mountains and rivers, a magnificent stretch of mountains and rivers. Was this the coordinates of that secret artifact? However, right now, he wanted to know even more what was behind that ancient artifact, what kind of world was it cut off from. He always felt that this ancient artifact was too heaven-defying. If he really found it, perhaps he would discover a brand new world. Chu Feng said to himself, "Why do I feel that this secret artifact seems to have blocked the passage between the heavens and 10,000 worlds, cutting off an era? Behind it is a magnificent blood-colored battlefield. If I really find it, perhaps it won't be so beautiful." He even felt that this was like filling up the eye of the sea, blocking the vast heavens and seas. His imagination ran wild, but right now Yushang couldn't help him. After passing down the imprint, the traces of the memory clues in Yushang's mind were smoothed out, and he didn't have too many impressions. Then, Chu Feng shifted his attention. He thought of the scene at the very beginning. He saw 3 blood-stained seeds sliding down from that artifact, and then they broke through the void, thus disappearing into the distance. After that, all the scenes had nothing to do with the 3 seeds, they were stained with blood, directly and completely disappeared. What was the origin of these 3 seeds? After seeing those terrifying scenes, Chu Feng's doubts increased, and he was even more astonished at the origin of the 3 seeds. Were they things that belonged to the secret artifact's owner? Or could it be that the 3 seeds were won by the experts of the secret artifact's owner's camp from that terrifying battlefield? This was because, after carefully recalling those scenes, Chu Feng felt that the 3 seeds were very important. Even the secret artifact flowing with mysterious yellow energy wanted to take back the 3 seed. However, the 3 seeds escaped and disappeared without a trace. Moreover, it was also at that moment that the great battle became more and more intense, as if there were countless existences, peerless experts of different eras, and many great enemies attacking together, all wanting to cut off the path and obtain the 3 blood-stained seeds. How many seeds belonged to the heavens, to that battlefield? Chu Feng was much more relaxed. He once again immersed himself in his inner world, observing that imprint. However, after the 3rd time, he couldn't touch it anymore, and he couldn't explore it anymore. You can only look at it 3 times a year. Yushang reminded him. He could still remember the minor details, but he had long since lost any impression of the key secret. Chu Feng was astonished, and then he became even more solemn. He no longer looked at it, and only recalled the things he had seen before in his mind, pondering silently. He was very shocked that the 3 seeds in his body were actually related to the secret artifact guarded by Yushang's clan. His mind wandered, thinking of too many things. How did the last 3 seeds fall onto Earth? Moreover, they were at the exit of the purgatory of the path of reincarnation. In addition, who had obtained the 3 seeds and put them back into the stone jar? No matter how he looked at it, the stone jar in his body wasn't simple. It seemed to be even more mysterious, and it had existed for an extremely long time. There was no information about the stone jar in the spiritual imprint on Yushang's ancestor's body. It seemed that the 3 seeds had slipped out of the secret artifact and flown away from the bloody battlefield countless years ago. Who had obtained them? Moreover, the person who had obtained the seeds shouldn't be simple. Otherwise, how could he have such a heaven-defying object like the stone jar? Chu Feng had a feeling that the stone jar in his hand might not be inferior to the so-called ultimate objects in the history of evolution. So much so that he felt that the stone jar might not necessarily be inferior to the secret artifact guarded by Yushang's ancestor. Some memories regarding the stone jar floated up in his mind. Back then, it was so ordinary and not a jar, but a square. Only after going through all kinds of unforeseen events did the space inside expand. Only then did some special patterns appear on its surface, including the extremely mysterious golden symbols. Even the characters on the rough stone millstone in the radiant city of reincarnation seemed to originate from the stone jar. The characters were similar. At this moment, Yushang was somewhat absent-minded. One moment he was crying, and the next moment he was laughing foolishly. His hair was white and his eyes were turbid. The main reason was that he had let go of the burden in his heart. Moreover, he knew that he actually had descendants who were still alive. Their bloodline hadn't been severed. He was so excited that he cried and laughed at the same time. All these years, he had been too depressed, and too miserable. Only after a long time did he come back to his senses. Meanwhile, Chu Feng had already woken up. Seeing Elder Yushang like this, he felt sad for him, but at the same time, he was happy for him. Yao Yao was his descendant, and she had finally brought dawn and hope to Yushang. There was expectation in his heart, and he was no longer lifeless. No matter what, Chu Feng wanted to protect Elder Yushang and let him live a bit longer. He wanted to strive to endure until the day Yao Yao reappeared. But Chu Feng's heart was also somewhat heavy. Was Yao Yao really still alive? He couldn't wait to return to the great abyss in the lesser Yin realm and jump to find Yao Yao. I want to become a peerless expert. I want to charge into the heavens in the shortest time possible and retrieve everything, he growled. Afterwards, Chu Feng thought about whether he had anything on him that could prolong Yushang's life. He was really worried that Elder Yushang would pass away in a sitting posture in the next few months. That would be too miserable. Huh! His heart was stirred as he thought of a possibility. He felt that perhaps he could try it. Perhaps he could change the fate of the lonely and helpless Elder Yushang. Chu Feng had a bloodline fruit on him. This kind of thing was incomparably heaven-defying. If it was before, perhaps it wouldn't change anything for an old man like Yushang who had 1 foot in the grave. Moreover, Chu Feng didn't think too much about this. He had always been thinking about some legendary rare great medicine that could prolong one's lifespan and so on. But today, Chu Feng found out that the primogeniture of Yushang's family seemed to have an unimaginably great origin. Occasionally, people with extremely special blood would appear in the family. Presumably, that was the awakening and activation of the family's ancestral blood. Since that was the case, he knew that the origin of this family's bloodline was extremely heaven-defying. Perhaps Elder Yushang could see the light of dawn at the end of his life. That kind of blood could baptize all spirits, so it was most likely that he could save himself. If the bloodline fruit could stimulate Yushang to mutate, transform, and activate that kind of ancient true blood, perhaps some things could be changed. When Chu Feng thought of this, he quickly took out the non-attribute fruit among the bloodline fruit. It could only purify one's own bloodline and let Yushang eat it. Yushang was startled when he found out what it was. This thing was considered heaven-defying even in the prehistoric era, but it was almost impossible to find in the current era. Even if there were clues, it would be controlled by the ultimate characters. How could others pick it? Senior, eat 2 more. I don't have anything else, but I have plenty of this fruit, Chu Feng said in a domineering manner. Where did you get it? I got it after beating the martial madman's successor with a sneak attack. I plucked an entire tree of fruits and kept them all, Chu Feng said. Yushang was speechless. He really didn't know what to say. Was this even possible? Chu Feng said, Senior, take your time to eat it. I'll go out and take a look. I'll urge Celestial Venerable Qi Rong to open the secret realm. He owes me immediately. When Chu Feng walked out of the golden tent, he heard the sound of flapping wings. He suddenly raised his head and felt his hair stand on end. His heart trembled violently. It was a group of reincarnation hunters. They appeared on the battlefield and flew across the sky. Croak! Almost at the same time, he heard a strange and terrifying bird cry from the distant horizon. It actually made one's body go cold. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, Chu Feng saw Celestial Venerable Qi Rong's body tremble and almost collapse to the ground. What's going on? Chu Feng was astonished. Chapter 13-14. That cry was too mournful, like a chilly wind blowing in one's face, a torrential rain of blood pouring down, and darkness covering the sky. That creature hadn't even appeared, but it already gave people this kind of extreme discomfort. What kind of creature was a celestial venerable forager? Although he had long heard of it, Chu Feng really hadn't seen it before. He only heard that it was abnormally evil. Everywhere it went, not even a blade of grass would grow, and the ground would sink several meters deep. When it appeared nearby, the stronger the evolver, the easier it was for accidents to happen. According to the records, after some celestial venerables heard the mournful cry, they would fall to the ground, their soul light burning and turning into ashes. If people went to investigate, they would discover that there was an extremely small bloody hole on the top of their skull or on their frontal bone, and their brain juice had long since disappeared. There were also ancient records that after some celestial venerables fell, they looked fine on the outside, but the bone marrow in their body was completely gone. It was extremely terrifying. Not only celestial venerables, but if there were mighty figures nearby, they would similarly suffer a calamity. The weakest of its prey was also a celestial venerable, and the upper limit was unknown. Weak creatures and those below the celestial venerable level were simply beneath it. The state of all the deceased was extremely miserable. Their soul blood dried up, their bodies were shriveled, and their entire bodies shrunk by a large margin. Moreover, the deceased's pupils were wide open, as if they had seen the most inconceivable thing before their death. They were filled with disbelief and endless fear. Unfortunately, very few people had seen a forager. If they really did encounter one, almost all of them would die. There were very few records about its true body in the ancient records, and the accounts were different. Some people said that it was a kind of evil spirit that had escaped reincarnation, specifically harming celestial venerables with abundant yang qi and blood essence. If the mighty figure's body wasn't dried up and especially declining, it was easy to be targeted by it. Some people also said that the so-called forager was a great evil spirit that came from the sky-piercing waterfall. It was incompatible with this world and couldn't adapt to the rules of the Yang realm. Therefore, it hunted the powerhouses of this world, stole their essence, and absorbed Tao fruit. There were also people who said that the so-called forager was actually a creature from the Yang realm. It was once illustrious and world-shattering, leaving behind extremely thick ink in the history of evolution. The years that these people experienced were too ancient. As early as long ago or even before history, they had no choice but to bury themselves in the famous mountains and rivers, absorbing the vitality of the earth veins to reduce their own consumption and ensure that they could live. And at a certain stage, when they really couldn't endure it anymore, they would come out to look for food. Just think about it, how terrifying were the famed mountains and great rivers in the Yang realm. It was very rare for the various sects to be able to approach and occupy them. Normally, living creatures were buried in them, and they were extremely terrifying. Some people speculated that there might even be old monsters that didn't belong to this era. Of course, there were also completely different speculations, believing that the foragers weren't ordinary creatures at all, but rather special substances. For example, some experts guessed that it was an extremely strange and terrifying gray substance. There were also some old monsters who believed that it was a reappearance of the dark matter that could bury emperors. There were others who said that the foragers were actually an extension of the great Tao laws. They were tainted by strange blood and took form, carrying out some type of harvesting mission. Old Qi Sr., what happened to you? Are you all right? Chu Feng hurried over and helped Celestial Master Qi Rong up. Qi Rong's body was cold and stiff. He almost couldn't move. Just now, he was really afraid that he would collapse and die miserably. He calmed down and let out a long breath. He was fine, and this time he did not become food for the so-called foragers. Chu Feng left him behind and quickly ran back to the big tent. He was a bit worried about Yushang. Fortunately, nothing bad happened. Yushang was staring blankly at the bloodline fruit, lost in thought. Senior, don't think too much. Eat it quickly, urged Chu Feng. He hoped that Yushang could endure and live until the day Yao Yao reappeared. Then he ran out again to scout out the situation. Sure enough, something had happened. Loud cries and cries of alarm came from the distance. It wasn't the Yongzhou camp, but the Shanzhou camp. A celestial master had died miserably. According to the news, the person's bone marrow had disappeared and a body of black hair had grown out. His facial features were distorted, and his eyes were wide open. He had died with everlasting regret. His body had shrunk to less than a meter tall. Moreover, he looked like a malicious spirit after his death. It was incomparably malevolent. Apart from this, there was actually a reincarnation hunter who died unexpectedly. He fell from the sky and had his brain juice eaten. This caused a huge shock and terror. Unexpectedly, there were people who dared to attack reincarnation hunters. This was extremely terrifying, and a slight carelessness could lead to disastrous consequences. Unfortunately, the corpse was in the Shanzhou camp, so Chu Feng couldn't go to the scene to see. Someone described that the dead reincarnation hunter had a fox's face, an eagle's mouth, and a human body. It had a pair of wings, and although it was less than half a person's height, its evolutionary level was extremely high. Its eyes were empty, and its brain juice had been eaten by the forager. This triggered a huge storm, causing a group of reincarnation hunters to descend nearby. There were more than 10 of them. They moved together and searched frantically, wanting to find the culprit. This group of hunters was extremely powerful. The aura they emitted made many people feel as if their bodies were being cut by knives. The entire battlefield was shaking, and the firmament was rumbling as if it was about to explode. This was a group of extraordinary experts. Ao! Suddenly, a bitter howl was heard. It was the forager who had appeared once again. In a split second, a celestial master died miserably on the spot. His eyes were lifeless as he fell on his back. His soul light was burned clean in a flash, and he died a strange and miserable death. Ao! The forager howled once again. It was truly terrifying, and it made the evolvers of the Yongzhou and Shanzhou camps tremble involuntarily. Run! Many people in the Shanzhou camp cried out in horror and fled frantically. That was because another celestial master had collapsed at this moment, and his bone marrow had been eaten clean. What kind of creature was this forager? The howl was ear-piercing. Mist covered the sky and earth, covering the dozen or so reincarnation hunters that were rushing over at extreme speed. On the battlefield, everyone was terrified. They couldn't see it, but everyone could sense that it was nearby. A miserable howl rang out as a creature over a dozen zhang tall fell to the ground. Its entire face was covered in red hair, and there was a bloody hole between its brows. Another reincarnation hunter had died miserably here. Creatures that challenge reincarnation have always found it difficult to succeed. Those that exist have all died. The reincarnation hunters were infuriated. They had never encountered such a thing before. There was actually a creature that specifically hunted them down like this. This was a rare provocation, and it was looking down on reincarnation. The reincarnation hunter that spoke was a large snake. Its entire body was covered in red scales, and half of its body was covered in black flames while the other half was wrapped in blue ice crystals. Extreme flames and extreme coldness were one with its body. Some people recognized that this was a legendary creature that had long been extinct in the Yang realm. Unexpectedly, it had appeared again today as a reincarnation hunter. This made people suspicious. Could it be that this organization wasn't stationed in the Yang realm, but somewhere else? They had descended today, and that was why they could see this creature again? Yang Great Snake. Even the celestial masters gasped. That was because a peerless overlord had appeared in the prehistoric times, and its strength was universally shocking. This kind of creature coexisted with extreme Yin and extreme Yang, and some of the more outstanding ones cultivated incomparable Tao fruit. In the end, this race evolved into a restricted area in the Yang realm. However, that restricted area was destroyed by someone in the end, causing this race to disappear. A cry suddenly rang out. The forager was approaching again. "Come out for me!" The Yang Great Snake shouted. Its entire body was red and its scales were dense. After coiling into a snake mountain, it released its spiritual energy and searched everywhere. However, in the next moment, a terrifying sound rang out. Its companion beside it had died. Its entire body was shriveled up, and it had shrunk by a large margin. "You are..." The Yang Great Snake's voice was trembling. It seemed to have seen a terrifying silhouette in the gray mist. It was actually trembling. One had to bear in mind that it was the vice leader of this group of hunters. It was about to transcend the Empyrean domain, yet it was scared to this extent. "How is this possible? The legend has reappeared. I've seen it on the stone carvings." Its voice was trembling as it roared there. No one knew what kind of creature it had encountered to actually be scared to this extent. They were all deeply shocked. The mist surged, and a mournful cry rang out there. The Yang Great Snake was born with Yang eyes that could see through everything. It sensed something and witnessed some kind of mystery. It was fiercely resisting. Beams of Yin and Yang light rose together, and it released a powerful attack. However, as soon as the order runes in its eyes flew out, it collapsed. Blood flowed out from the space between its brows, gurgling out. Its blood essence dried up, and many black hairs grew out from the cracks of its scales. Its body shrunk to less than a tenth of its original size, and it died instantly. The mist in that area dispersed. When everyone saw the Yang Great Snake die, they were all shocked. It had only been a brief encounter, yet it had already become food for a forager. This was too shocking. What exactly was that thing? It was clear that the Yang Great Snake seemed to have discovered something. Otherwise, it wouldn't have said those words before its death. However, what exactly was it trying to reveal? The forager's mournful cry rang out again. It was as if a malicious spirit from hundreds of millions of years ago had appeared. It slaughtered all of the creatures in hell, broke free, and slaughtered its way into the world of the living. Roar! Its voice was extremely terrifying. Chilly winds whistled past, and a thick mist swept over. It instantly engulfed the battlefield on three sides. The appearance of the forager made everyone's scalp go numb. Pooh! Pooh! In succession, several reincarnation hunters fell to the ground, their corpses facing the sky. They died with remaining grievances. They were all suddenly killed in the mist. This made everyone tremble with fear. They were incomparably terrified. This was a reincarnation hunter. How many people dared to provoke them in the past millions of years? It had always been them looking for trouble, yet today, they died again and again. Behind them was reincarnation. The game at this level was simply unimaginable. It involved the heavens above and the earth below, affecting the myriad realms in the heavens. In the end, this kind of thing actually happened today. It wasn't that there hadn't been world-shocking tragedies when the foragers went out in the past, but in the end it had never been as horrifying as today. Could it be that the foragers had never encountered reincarnation hunters before, and that was why they were able to live in harmony? The evolvers of the Shanzhou camp fled frantically for fear of becoming food. Even a celestial venerable had died tragically, so who wouldn't be afraid? Even the name of the reincarnation hunters didn't work, so how could they not be terrified? Many people realized that they had underestimated the foragers too much in the past. Was this a race, or had it always been a single creature from ancient times until now, foraging and wandering alone? From the words of the yin-yang great snake before its death, it could be inferred that the foragers' origins were boundlessly enormous. They had once appeared in some kind of frightening legend on stone inscriptions from an unknown era. In the end, all the reincarnation hunters had run away, and the few survivors had fled for their lives, disappearing without a trace. However, many people felt that the problem was too big. A gargantuan storm would appear, and the power of reincarnation would appear. Even the Yang realm would be shaken because of this. A mournful cry appeared in the Shanzhou camp, and gray mist surged. Celestial Venerable Qi Rong's body trembled, and his entire body actually couldn't budge. Then, everything before his eyes turned black, and he lost consciousness all of a sudden. He collapsed head first onto the ground. Chu Feng was terrified. He realized that the situation was far from reassuring. The foragers had appeared, and they were in the vicinity. Were they specifically targeting life forms at the Celestial Venerable level and above? Was Celestial Venerable Qi Rong dead or alive? Chu Feng didn't know, but he could still be considered unharmed. Even though his body was aching as if it was being sliced apart, and his soul light was about to explode, he hadn't suffered a fatal blow after all. The Yin mist covered the sky and covered the earth as it surged over here. Chu Feng was scared, and he almost used the reincarnation earth and the black wooden spear the length of a chopstick to defend himself. He couldn't retreat because Yushang's large tent was behind him. He was very worried that something had happened to Yushang. In reality, he couldn't leave either. He definitely couldn't be faster than the foragers. It was hard to imagine how profound the other party's cultivation was. Even a group of reincarnation hunters had been killed by it. It was approaching. Chu Feng's hair stood on end. He could clearly feel that something was approaching from within the dense fog. It was almost right in front of his eyes, and he could even feel the other party opening its mouth and blowing a gloomy and cold air at him. An ancient language transmitted over. It was intermittent, as if a soulless person was murmuring in his sleep. It brought along endless gray Yin mist as it pervaded over. Chu Feng couldn't understand it. What era's language was that? Why did he feel that it was somewhat similar to the language spoken by Number 9? Chu Feng's body tensed up as he carefully sensed it. He actually heard some kind of spiritual language from the other party's strange and terrifying spiritual undulations. 3 lives. Medicine, it seemed like it was summoning a soul, but it also seemed like some kind of obsession was reverberating. It was extremely terrifying, and it brought along a boundless gloomy and cold aura. It seemed as if it came from the deepest part of the netherworld, and it made one's hair stand on end. Chapter 13-15. What was the 3-life medicine? Chu Feng was suspicious. He was so close that he could almost feel the other party's ice-cold aura. Was this creature actually muttering the name of a kind of medicine? But even though he was suspicious, Chu Feng was more scared now. He was really too passive. His life and death weren't in his own hands. If the forager attacked him, Chu Feng seriously suspected that he might not be able to block it even if he used the reincarnation earth and the little black wooden spear. He didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. Unless he had no other choice, he wasn't willing to take out a big killing weapon like the chopstick-length little black wooden spear. He didn't even open his fiery eyes for fear of stimulating this forager. The fog was extremely dense and boundless, covering the entire Harmony Prefecture camp. Millions of evolvers were retreating, all of them fleeing from this place. But now Chu Feng couldn't leave. He had been locked onto by this indescribable creature. Not far away, Qi Rong was stiffly lying on the ground. But he was a celestial venerable after all. He recovered after a short while and was about to escape after opening his eyes. But before he could get up, the forager howled and let out a mournful howl. It was like the resentment of millions of malicious spirits gathered together. The gray fog surged. Qi Rong had just moved a little when he fell down again. His vision darkened as he fainted once more. Chu Feng's scalp went numb. This was really a terrifying creature that fed on evolvers at the celestial venerable level and above. A casual howl made Qi Rong stiffen to death. In fact, Chu Feng was also rejoicing. Even if he had a feeling that his soul light was about to collapse, he didn't receive a fatal blow after all. The other party didn't target people below the celestial venerable level. He was a little worried about Yushang, afraid that an accident would happen to him. Sure enough, he felt some movement in the tent at this moment. Yushang was struggling to come out. "Senior, don't act rashly. Wait there." Chu Feng hurriedly transmitted his voice to tell Yushang that this was a forager that specialized in targeting powerhouses. But he was fine outside. Yushang was a little worried. He was afraid that an accident would happen to Chu Feng. But in the end, he was stopped by Chu Feng's very anxious transmission, so he chose not to move. In reality, he couldn't move either. The forager howled again, and Yushang also collapsed, fainting on the ground. This area became quiet. The two Empyreans fell backwards, and Chu Feng stood rigidly in place. Meanwhile, the others all ran, escaping from the thick fog region. In the deathly stillness, Chu Feng sensed that a creature was circling around him. It walked a circle and then looked elsewhere, still muttering 3 life medicine. After that, the place fell into a deathly silence. However, Chu Feng felt more and more frightened. He felt as if he had left the world of the living and entered a strange world. The Yin fog surged and covered the sky and the earth. Regardless of whether it was Zhan Province's camp or He Province's camp, everyone was gazing into the distance. They all felt that this was inconceivable, because all of Harmony Province's camp seemed to have fallen into the netherworld, falling into the underworld. It was too dusky, the Yin energy so dense it was frightening. In the dense fog and the deathly stillness, Chu Feng suddenly heard a distant and frightening bell sound. It was like the bell hanging on the neck of some terrifying beast was shaking. At the same time, he felt a bone-piercing chill. The forager was nearby, appearing from time to time in front of him and behind him. Its speed was too fast, sometimes to the left and sometimes to the right. The ground was sinking, and the layers of earth were noiselessly annihilated. The forager was searching for something. Chu Feng threw caution to the wind and opened his fiery eyes. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to detect a fierce attack from the other party. He wanted to see what this so-called forager was. Finally, he saw it. In the dense fog, there was a person with disheveled hair. He was currently moving at an inconceivable speed, appearing and disappearing throughout the entire area. However, his steps were soundless and unceasingly illusory. There were several times when his face was almost touching Chu Feng's. No wonder he could feel the other party's breath. However, his face was covered in disheveled hair, and his true appearance could not be seen. Even the fiery eyes could not see through his hair. The forager was wearing tattered clothes. They looked like the legendary golden jade clothing woven from mother gold, but they had long since rotted away. It was hard to imagine how many years they had experienced. His gray hair was disheveled, and there were dark bloodstains on his tattered clothes, but they had long since dried up. This person was like a ghost. Occasionally, he would let out a howl that would shake one's soul, making one feel as if their soul would collapse with it. This was the result of him restraining his aura and not targeting a weak creature like Chu Feng. Otherwise, he would have died just like a deity. However, Chu Feng also had his suspicions. This forager had not eaten Qi Rong. He was still alive and well, and had only fainted. Where did the ringing sound come from? It did not originate from this disheveled forager. The next moment Chu Feng was shocked. He had finally discovered a secret. It was shocking and terrifying. The space behind this forager was collapsing, as if it was connected to another world. As the forager moved, the collapsing space also moved. It was as if he was carrying a world on his back. The ringing sound came from that collapsing world, and there was a fierce beast roaming about within. Chu Feng was deeply astonished. What kind of situation was this? A forager carrying a world on his back? What secret was there in that space? Golden runes flickered in Chu Feng's eyes. In any case, the two sides were already so close. If the forager really wanted to attack him, he would not show any mercy. He stared at the collapsing world, wanting to pry into all its secrets. In a flash, he felt the world spin around him, almost making him faint. This was because the collapsing world was revolving, and there was a strange energy diffusing. It was a vortex that constantly rotated, like a dark starry sky that was slowly rotating. It seemed as if it wanted to suck one's mind in. It was extremely dusky inside, as if it was spiraling deeper and deeper. Along the way there were many creatures. They were like corpses but also like soulless people. They floated and wandered about. What kind of situation was this? Chu Feng was deeply shaken. The collapsing vortex world on the forager's back was like a realm of death. There were all kinds of zombie-like things wandering about. The most important thing was that this world continuously went deeper and deeper, spiraling deeper. There was a strong decaying aura coming from the depths, and the aura of death overflowed into the heavens. This was extremely strange. When Chu Feng did not pay attention to this collapsing world, he did not smell any aura. However, now, the decaying aura and aura of death seemed to cover the sky and cover the earth. The ringing sound came from a fierce beast in the spiraling world. It continuously wailed in the darkness. It looked like a hellhound, tall like a mountain, pitch black like ink, and extremely terrifying. Chu Feng shook his head. This situation was extremely strange. The forager was carrying a collapsing world, and there were strange and sinister things inside. It was too abnormal no matter how he looked at it. Chu Feng calmed himself down and stared at the vortex world. He found that many walking corpses were unconsciously moving about in the realm of death. They seemed to be incomparably powerful when they were alive. He stared in that direction, and the golden runes in his eyes were terrifying. He saw something even deeper in that realm of death. There were some broken metal pieces. Dang! When he stared at those floating fragments, he actually heard the sound of a bell. It seemed to be able to pierce through the past, present, and future. It was extremely intimidating, and his entire sea of heart throbbed. His mind was about to go blank. Something strange. Chu Feng was shocked, but he did not give up. He continued to stare, and he seemed to be able to see the end of that world. In a daze, he saw a person sitting there with his back to the outside world. His body was leaning forward, and a broken bell was scattered there. That person was covered in blood, and half of his body was leaning on the broken bell. There was a decaying aura, and there was also a dense mist. Apart from this, through the broken bell, there was also a damaged and blurry scene. A bronze coffin was dyed in blood, and it was unknown who was buried inside. It had fallen into the distance. "Oho, medicine, come!" the beast roared. It was a type of wailing sound that transmitted over in an ancient language. Chu Feng could not understand it, but there was a weak spiritual energy rippling out, transmitting to the outside world. This made Chu Feng understand what it meant. Accompanied by the beast's roar and the sound of wailing, the giant black beast in the vortex world was shaking. Chu Feng was startled back to his senses. He could not see the blood-stained figure lying on the broken bell in the depths of the vortex, but he still felt a wave of apprehension. Chapter 13:16. He had seen him before? It was actually so familiar. In the spiritual imprint number 9 displayed, this person possessed an extremely thick brush strokes that shook the ancients and dazzled the contemporaries. Unfortunately, back then, Chu Feng was in too much of a hurry, unable to carefully observe his life. Now, he felt rather helpless. However, he clearly remembered that in that glorious and terrifying past, whenever the most important moment, whenever the heavens were suffocated, his figure would always appear. It was like this from past to present. Each time, he would be able to turn the tide. Scenes after scenes, a great bell rumbled, no one in the world able to resist him, even the river of time bowing down beneath his feet. What made Chu Feng feel regret was that during those most important moments of history, when it concerned the life and death of the heavens above and earth below, at the final juncture of the overall situation, most of the time, this person only revealed his back, always shrouded in mist, his true appearance never seen. Just like now, his back to the outside world, the damaged bell accompanying him. In the past, the great bell suppressed the heavens, seemingly impossible to surpass. He towered between heaven and earth, like a monument that could never be surpassed. His life was too glorious and resplendent, there was no enemy he couldn't defeat. He tore through everything, the bell waves intimidating all immortals into submission, sweeping through the heavens above and earth below, unmatched from past to present. The so-called life was a song, there were no valleys. From his youth, he suppressed all opponents, slaughtering his way until he was unmatched, flattening all forbidden lands. With a leap, he achieved eternity, suppressing past, present, and future. There had never been a person like this who shone with boundless radiance, contending for the world from a young age, unmatched from then on, the true number one under the starry skies. Then, in the starry skies, he was also unmatched. However, it was hard for others to accept now. His back was still towards everyone, but he was lying on the damaged bell, his entire body covered in blood, signs of decay. This type of overflowing talent, an unmatched figure actually fell to this type of state. It was hard to imagine what had happened in the past. What unforeseen changes happened exactly? What did he encounter to actually reach this step, to end up in such a miserable state? Even Chu Feng felt a wave of fear. He carefully recalled the scenes he saw in number 9's spiritual imprint. This was simply an unfathomable and powerful man, yet in the end, he actually withered away, his corpse lying on his own broken bell. Yes, Chu Feng remembered the ending that number 9 had seen. In the final battle of this man, he had shone brilliantly and pierced through the heavens. However, he had his back to his enemies and old friends. His entire body was covered in blood as he fell to the ground. And in the background, at the same time, was his weapon, the great bell, exploding. Accompanied by a rain of his own blood, this undefeatable man withered and sank. At that moment, it was as if countless people were roaring in anger and crying. All living things seemed to be chanting his name, recalling his achievements. The entire world offered sacrifices to him, and then the entire world became silent. When he was brought into that period of history, sinking into the long river of time that had disappeared, even Chu Feng was infected. He felt a sense of solemnity and desolation. Even such a great expert couldn't escape the day he disappeared. This person belongs to the lesser underworld. He went to my birthplace, swept through the heavens above and earth below, and lived a brilliant life. However, he still encountered a calamity in the flow of time, dying in peace. It's too regretful. Chu Feng looked at that special vortex world, sinking into a type of indescribable emotion. The forager carried a collapsed world on his back. Within it there was a giant black beast roaring in grief. There was a supreme expert's corpse on the ruined bell. All of this stirred up one's heartstrings. Suddenly, Chu Feng's body went taut, all of the fine hairs on his body standing on end. The forager's hair was disheveled, dressed in rotting gold and jade clothing. He actually arrived before him, almost touching his face. Moreover, the forager was sniffing, his nose continuously moving, about to touch Chu Feng's face. This made his entire body break out in goosebumps. He almost wanted to resist and fight to the end. However, he also understood that the disparity between the two was too great. It would be difficult for there to be a good result. What was he trying to do? Was he really going to eat him? Did he feel that his flesh was especially delicious, that there was too much essence, energy, and potential stored within his cells? Chu Feng's imagination ran wild. At this moment, he felt his nose itch. The other party's messy hair was touching his body. At this moment, he saw the discontinuity of time, the destruction and rebirth of the galaxy, all of it on the surface of this forager's body. There was actually this kind of abnormal scene. Fortunately, the forager's hair didn't have this kind of scene. If it also had this kind of scene, he might encounter misfortune after encountering Chu Feng. The forager sniffed back and forth, causing Chu Feng to be unable to take it anymore. The two of them were just too close, almost completely touching each other. Were you going to eat him, or were you going to do something else? I'm a man. In the end, Chu Feng couldn't take it anymore. He reminded himself that he was a man. What exactly did you want? He could roughly see that this forager was only acting out of instinct. Suddenly, a gloomy and cold laughter was transmitted over, carrying a bit of awe-inspiring terror. Chu Feng felt a chill run down his spine. Was he going to make a move on him? No, it wasn't released by the forager. Who was this? He was gobsmacked. In this kind of place, any creature that dared to appear in front of the forager was absolutely heaven-defying. Could it be that a high-level reincarnation hunter had appeared? Chu Feng suddenly turned his head. He saw the boundless fog, but didn't see any silhouettes. He looked at the forager again, but it didn't have any reaction. It seemed to have ignored that voice. "Who?" shouted Chu Feng. He always felt that this voice made him feel uneasy because his whole body was stretched taut. His physical body, his essence, energy, and spirit were all reacting intensely. This was a kind of instinct, like the reaction of encountering some kind of natural enemy. Chu Feng? A somewhat hoarse and chilly voice transmitted over from the fog. It made people tremble with fear. Chu Feng was gobsmacked. Who was that person? He could actually recognize his identity. This was too inconceivable. Did someone in the Yang realm see through his roots? It couldn't be that Tai Wu had come, right? Which one? He shouted. At this time, he completely ignored the forager nearby. He always felt that the existence in the fog was a greater threat and had ill intentions towards him. Hee. This time, a woman's laughter came from the fog. It was somewhat feminine and didn't seem to be unpleasant to listen to. However, it gave Chu Feng goosebumps. He felt more and more that danger was approaching. There's a woman over there. Chu Feng indicated to the forager and pointed in a certain direction. However, the forager didn't pay attention to him. It walked and stopped in this area, sometimes lowering its head, and sometimes looking up at the sky. It was somewhat restless and seemed to have sensed something. However, it didn't seem to be directed at the creature that had made the sound in the dark. Chu Feng, long time no see. I've missed you a bit. The person in the dark spoke again. There was a coldness within the femininity that made one's scalp go numb. Who exactly are you? You're neither a man nor a woman. Get out here, shouted Chu Feng. An enemy actually appeared in this kind of situation. Just what kind of background did he have? Then, he saw a pair of eyes appear in the great fog not too far away. They were a deathly gray without the slightest bit of luster. As it gradually approached, he could see that there was a bit of resentment and a bit gloomy. What kind of situation was this? As the fine hairs on Chu Feng's body stood on end, he directly blasted out an ultimate fist. At the same time, he prepared to throw caution to the wind and bring out the wooden spear. However, after the fist imprint blasted out, the fog in that area scattered. The pair of eyes also turned into mist. Chu Feng's attack was useless. Hee, what a delicious taste. What a sumptuous blood feast. I really want to know how you survived back then. The voice was neither male nor female. It was sometimes hoarse and sometimes feminine, changing unpredictably. It moved left and right, east and west in the great fog without a fixed form. Chu Feng's body stiffened, and he felt more and more danger approaching. And at this moment, a certain object in his body began to revolve and move slowly. It made him realize what he had encountered in the end. Within his body, the small gray grinding stone crushed on its own and began to revolve. The golden runes carved on it by Chu Feng were glowing. Was this a warning or a self-defense mechanism? He knew that the voice in the great fog was definitely related to the gray matter. Chu Feng's eyes were red. Back then, in order to increase his strength and take revenge for his family and friends, he didn't hesitate to go to a distant foreign land and cultivate evil mutant technique. This led to himself being corroded by more and more gray matter and living a life worse than death. In the end, he had no choice but to reincarnate because his body had deteriorated to the extreme. His future path was already cut off and his potential was squeezed dry. His soul light was covered in dust and he couldn't cultivate normally. Chu Feng narrowly escaped death. He couldn't completely eradicate the gray matter even with the help of the rough stone plate in the radiant city of death. Only when he arrived at the end of the reincarnation road where the clay idol sat cross-legged and carried out the final attack did he completely break free from his predicament and wash away the gray matter. Meanwhile, the gray matter was smelted into his body and fused with the small black and white grinding stone to become the small gray grinding stone. Now, the small gray grinding stone reacted and revolved on its own. This made Chu Feng guess that the gray matter had reappeared. Another era has begun. This time, it's the gray era. In the great fog, that pair of eyes reappeared. They were like the eyes of a dead fish, and were devoid of vitality. They carried resentment and coldness as they closed in on Chu Feng. Chu Feng gnashed his teeth in anger. He was increasingly aware of how terrifying this gray fog was. Moreover, this seemed to be an acquaintance. Back then, a mass of the densest gray matter had escaped from his body. He suspected that it had crossed the boundary membrane with the people of the Yang realm and entered the Yang realm. Could it be it? "Little Gray, is that you?" shouted Chu Feng. "You're courting death," the gray matter coldly berated. This was a mass of self-aware gray matter. It stood out from the masses and was incomparably awe-inspiring. It took human form and stared at Chu Feng. Moreover, it closed in on him. Chu Feng was puzzled. A forager had appeared and carried a world on its back. There was a supreme expert's corpse on the broken bell and a giant black beast. This was already very strange, but now why did the gray matter follow him? Was it coming for him? There was a muffled roar. After the gray matter took human form, it pounced over and charged at Chu Feng. "I miss the time you provided for me in the past." Chu Feng was furious. He had experienced so much in the past and was tormented by this gray matter to the point of death. Now, it still dared to bring up old matters and even wanted to kill him. This was intolerable. His stone jar and reincarnation earth were all prepared, but none of them reacted as intensely as the small gray grinding stone. It revolved rapidly on its own and wanted to rush out of his body. Chu Feng's body trembled. He sensed something and took the initiative to receive it. The two wheels of the grinding stone appeared on his left and right hands respectively. Then, he faced the gray matter head-on. At this moment little Gray cried out miserably. It was actually absorbed by the gray grinding stone, and then a portion of it was refined. It was simply in disbelief. What kind of person was this? How could he refine it? Its origins weren't simple at all. The gray matter had gained spirituality and turned into a tangible body. It was known as the essence of the gray matter and had long developed spirituality. In theory, it was almost impossible to suppress, but now someone was actually refining it. Moreover, it was its former host, the blood food of the past. It released a miserable cry and struggled free from Chu Feng's hands. It scattered into gray mist and revealed a pair of eyes that stared fiercely at Chu Feng from the distance. Then, the great mist was endless and boundless. It wrapped around Chu Feng from all directions. The gray matter was hidden within and was everywhere. It entered Chu Feng's body from different directions. The small gray grinding stone rotated and returned to the depths of Chu Feng's body in an instant. Then, it began to revolve frantically. All the gray matter that entered his body was refined and absorbed by the grinding stone, becoming a part of it. At this moment, Chu Feng could clearly feel that the broken gray grinding stone was becoming stronger and more solid. It was becoming an unfathomable artifact. The gray matter screamed in horror. Chapter 13:17. Call it father? After the gray matter developed intelligence, it had long opened the gates to the heavens. Its future was limitless, destined to set foot in the ultimate domain. However, now, its past host, blood food, actually made it call it father. It was so angry it felt like one Buddha was born, 2 Buddhas ascended to the heavens, and 3 Buddhas underwent nirvana. It wanted to immediately suck away Chu Feng's flesh essence, make him age 100,000 years, turn into dust, turn into dung, make this blood food understand that there were some creatures that couldn't be provoked. However, the reality was that it cried out miserably and struggled intensely. It was stuck to the small grinding stone in Chu Feng's body, continuously refined and crushed. Its body was shrinking. Call me father. Chu Feng pressured it again, determined to eat it up. The gray matter was a type of energy. It was going to become an existence in the unmatched domain. Now it could develop intelligence. It wasn't easy to take this step, yet in the end, it suffered this type of humiliation. No one knew that there was a gray seed with endless potential here. If they knew the truth, it would definitely incite panic and bring about great chaos in the world. However, what was Chu Feng doing to it? He truly had enough of the gray matter. When he thought back to the events of the past, he directly took off his shoes and began to beat the gray matter. Beat it with the sole of his shoes? The gray matter essence was about to go crazy, actually humiliating it like this. Do you know what you are doing? It became furious from humiliation. Of course I do. I want to beat you with my shoehorn and slap your mouth. Don't pretend in front of me, I've long had enough of you. It was precisely because of the deep hatred he felt towards it and those extremely bad memories that Chu Feng still purposely trampled on it even though he knew that he couldn't hurt it with his shoes. Call me father. He threatened and intimidated it again. The gray matter roared angrily. If it knew this earlier, it really wanted to return to the past and kill Chu Feng in the Little Yin realm, turn him into a puddle of stinky pus and blood, not giving him any chance. It never expected that the blood food that was beyond cure back then, one that had no chance of survival, not only came back from the dead, it was even alive and kicking, and could even counter it. The affairs of the world were truly hard to predict. It was both hateful and anxious. The The gray matter discovered that a third of its own essence had been lost in this short period of time. Waves of light smoke rose from it. It was continuously being refined, and the situation was extremely serious. As for Chu Feng, his entire body was relaxed. As the little grinding stone in his body became more and more condensed and solid, he could feel a sense of power and joy from the harvest. There was no need to think too much. The small grinding stone would definitely become a great weapon in the future. At this moment, Chu Feng had an illusion. Amidst the rising gray mist, he felt as if he was about to ascend to the heavens and ascend to heaven. Both his body and mind were very happy. All of his cells were becoming more and more active, almost breaking through to the great sage level and achieving a mythical metamorphosis. He was about to charge straight into the domain of illumination. The gray fog surged and drowned Chu Feng. Both inside and outside of his body, there was a thick gray substance, and the degree of purity was unprecedented. It could be said to be the essence of gray substance that was rarely seen since ancient times. Normally speaking, if one were to be corroded by such a substance, not to mention Chu Feng, even an incomparably powerful person would regret it for the rest of their life. Their entire life would be ruined, and even if they managed to survive, it would be extremely inauspicious. But now it was a kind of enjoyment for Chu Feng. He had an impulse and an illusion. Could he cultivate the mutant technique now? Could he absorb the divinity granules, ancestral Taoist matter, and so on to become stronger rapidly by continuously killing his enemies? That was because he wasn't afraid of the gray substance's corrosion anymore. The so-called drawbacks weren't a problem to him at all. Within Chu Feng's body, the small gray grinding stone condensed and became more and more simple and unadorned. However, it was even more unfathomable. Between the two grinding stones, golden runes were circulating and glistening brightly. Chu Feng, how dare you treat me like this? The gray substance hissed and howled like a malicious spirit. It was vicious and resentful, but it immediately cried out again, "Father!" Chu Feng was a little speechless. Wasn't this change in tone a little too fast? Father Chu. The gray substance changed its tone again and was incomparably anxious. It really couldn't bear it anymore. Half of its body had already been obliterated by Chu Feng, and the gray substance was less than 50%. At the same time, it transformed into a peerlessly beautiful and delicate woman. She appeared in Chu Feng's divine sense and begged him to let it go. She was elegant and beautiful beyond compare. She was around 20 years old, and her bright eyes were filled with tears. Her white clothes fluttered in the wind, making her look pitiful and weak. But how could Chu Feng give up? He knew her nature a long time ago, so he opened his mouth and said fiercely, "Wait until your cultivation increases by another 5,000 years. Then you can go and charm others. You're far from it now." "Father Chu, what do I have to do for you to let me go?" The ethereal young girl formed from the gray substance continued to beg with tears hanging on her lustrous white face. "Don't be mushy. You can't even call me Grandfather Chu." Not only did Chu Feng not give up, but he also exhausted all of his power to immediately refine it. Motherf *Ker, in that instant, the gray substance became hostile, carrying resentment. It cursed crazily, really wishing to immediately get rid of Chu Feng. However, in the end it continuously shrunk. In the end it released a miserable cry, breaking apart on its own, wishing to destroy everything indiscriminately. With a hong sound, the small gray millstone in Chu Feng's body suppressed down. The golden symbols on its surface shone with holy radiance, surrounding all of the gray mist. Under chi sounds, the gray substance was refined even faster. In the end, it only fled as a blast of mist, less than a fifth of its original size, becoming much weaker. Amidst its curses and hatred, it quickly fled into the distance. Chu Feng chased after it, but the gray substance scattered on its own, merging into the void, becoming formless and without a trace, fleeing for its life. In the end it escaped. It suffered serious injuries, even its spirituality almost scattering. One had to bear in mind that it wasn't easy to develop a spirit, reaching this step extremely difficult. It was the foreign deities who supported it. Back then, the divine remains Chu Feng saw in the foreign realm couldn't go unnoticed. After a large amount of the flesh and blood essence of various divine kings were corroded, it was formed. At this time, Chu Feng stopped because the forager was following him. It didn't leave his side and it even circled around him, making him feel a wave of fear. He didn't fear the gray substance, but he was quite fearful of this forager. Moreover, the collapsing world this forager carried on its back was too sinister and terrifying. However, Chu Feng wasn't in a bad mood. During the short period of refining the gray substance just now, the small millstone in his body changed again. Moreover, it gave him an indescribable experience. He was immersed in the golden symbols and was actually about to comprehend it. In a split second, Chu Feng's body heated up and the activity of his cells increased rapidly. He was actually going to transform and step into the realm of Illuminator? Since ancient times, there weren't many people who could step into the realm of Illuminator without the help of pollen. They were all special existences and became legends in the history of evolution. Now Chu Feng had the great sage body. If he were to break through from this realm, it would definitely be extremely astonishing. From a certain perspective, if he were to undergo a transition of life and transform successfully, he would become the legend among legends that Qin Luoyin spoke of. From then on, he would have boundless potential. I'm going to become a legend among legends. Chu Feng clenched his teeth. However, beside him, the forager with disheveled hair came closer again, almost sticking to his face as it sniffed continuously, making him feel extremely dangerous. Chu Feng guessed that there were clues about the so-called three-life medicine on him. Very soon, he thought of the 3 seeds. It couldn't be them, could it? This made him worried because he was able to reach this step all because of the 3 mysterious seeds. It would be too much of a pity if he were to lose them today. Now, he didn't dare to act rashly and had no way to transform and break through without the slightest scruple. However, this kind of comprehension and the state of his physical body's increased activity were engraved in his mind. Chu Feng calmed his heart and very soon, he was as calm as an ancient well. The current external environment was too vile and he couldn't evolve without distractions. However, he grasped and remembered his current comprehension. It wouldn't be too late to tear apart a legend when the time was right. Hello, Senior. I'm Divine King Chu. Of course, you can also call me Chao Shenhua. You're always revolving around me. What's the matter? Chu Feng spoke. He couldn't stand it anymore. No one could stand being targeted by a terrifying forager. Of course, his skin was too thick as he addressed himself as Chao Shenhua to the forager. Medicine's aura. The forager's hair was disheveled and the golden jade clothes on his body were made of special pieces of jade woven from mother gold. However, after experiencing the baptism of time and the corrosion of time, it had long since become tattered. He was covered in bloodstains as though he had suffered a serious injury. His consciousness was chaotic and his bestial nature was greater than his human nature. It was precisely because of this that he was in extreme danger. Chu Feng knew that the medicine the forager was talking about was the so-called 3-life medicine. Could it really be on him? After thinking about it, he felt that he only had 3 seeds on him that were more likely to be the 3-life medicine. The forager approached once again. Through his hair, his eyes, which were sometimes blood-red and sometimes empty, were reflected. He looked even more dangerous as though he was a wild beast about to go berserk. Chu Feng couldn't just sit and wait for death. If he was torn apart by this forager, his death would be too unjust. He secretly prepared the reincarnation soil and the small black wooden spear. He was ready to defend himself and counterattack at any time. However, All of Chu Feng's preparations were ineffective in front of the forager. It was hard to imagine just how powerful this strange man with disheveled hair was. He could practically confine heaven and earth with just a thought. Chu Feng felt his vision darken as his body was flung away. Then some of the items on his body changed owners. His heart trembled violently as he fell to the ground. 3 Life Medicine. Revive. In the world on the back of the forager, there was a huge black beast howling and roaring, shaking the dark and deathly silent world. This huge black beast was trembling from excitement as it gazed at the blood-covered figure lying on the damaged bell in the depths of the collapsed world. "I've found the 3 Life Medicine. You have to revive." It was howling. This left Chu Feng shaken. That unmatched expert who had his back to the outside world had once pierced through the heavens. His entire life was glorious and resplendent. Could it be that this man who had never fallen into a low point could actually revive in front of him? Chu Feng was extremely shocked as he stared at the depths of the collapsed world. There were many bell fragments there, and there were even more damaged bells that were rumbling and trembling as if they were in mourning, wanting to awaken their master. Chapter 13:18. With a ping sound, Chu Feng fell onto the ground. The reincarnation earth was still in his hands, not lost, but the chopstick-length small black wooden spear was already in the forager's palm. Chu Feng found this a bit hard to believe. That was the 3 Life Medicine? Dang. The damaged bell rang lightly. At this moment, it actually shook the heavens above and earth below, making one's soul feel as if it was undergoing a baptism. It was first purified and then converted. This wasn't even the true ringing of a great bell, but rather the trembling of a corner of a damaged bell, about to change the world. The only fortunate thing was that the bell waves didn't sweep out from the collapsed world, or else it would be a disaster. There would be a great disaster in both the heavens above and earth below. The forager held the black 3 Life Medicine in his hands as he was fiercely flung out. In the collapsed world behind him, everything was dusky, the entire heaven and earth spinning. It was like a sea eye that was connected to the heavens, absorbing everything. It was also like the ultimate limit of the damaged primordial universe, slowly spinning, extremely strange. The giant black beast inside already couldn't wait any longer, continuously barking, excited, but also bitter. From the past until now, it had always protected this place, never leaving or abandoning it. "Bring the 3 Life Medicine to the altar." The giant black beast roared. One could see that it was standing on the great earth covered in blood, lonely and desolate. It was actually extremely old, actually a large black dog that was declining. Its body swayed, unable to stand steadily, actually sitting on the ground like a human. It was as tall as a giant mountain, but its body was stooped, not even its waist straight. It was extremely old, its body also carrying serious injuries. Being able to live until now wasn't easy at all. It was frantically doing its best, doing everything it could to struggle, wishing to live until the next day. It was because it was unwilling, unconvinced, and even more so felt grief and frustration. The previously glorious generation had all withered away, died, and left. Only it was left, still protecting its master. Those were several heavenly emperors. When it thought of the past, it wanted to cry out in grief. It was tyrannical, barbaric, and also glorious, extremely brilliant, but it also experienced difficulties the world had never known or imagined. After the great decisive battle, it actually fell to this state. Its outer appearance was extremely rough, but deep inside, it was extremely meticulous and attached great importance to emotions. Otherwise, it wouldn't have guarded this place for so long, not leaving or abandoning this place, risking its life to live each day to protect the man whose corpse was lying on the ruined bell. The enormous black beast appeared increasingly aged. Its turbid eyes were filled with tears as it recalled the past. "I was once a close friend of the Celestial Emperor, and we followed the strongest people in history. We fought our way to the end of the darkness, to the source of the turbid river of souls, and stepped on the dangerous ancient road paved with blood that dyed the heavens red. We fought our whole lives, we withered, we passed away. Does anyone still know of us? The enormous black beast used to be extremely domineering, extremely cunning, even more so extremely ferocious, but now it was so weak. Its body was stooped, tears continuously flowing from its old eyes. We were once the most powerful golden generation, an invincible combination, but where are you now? Withering in the most terrifying and dazzling age of the heavens, going far away. The glory that belonged to us, the era that belonged to us, it cannot end like this. This aged and heavily injured black beast, under a low and sorrowful roar, suddenly raised its head towards the sky. It didn't believe that the most powerful golden combination in history would completely fall. Those were but the celestial emperors, stunning the ages, looking down on the endless time and space. How could they fall like this? However, when it thought of those past events, it still wanted to cry. Those glorious, those lamentable, those that disappeared, those that scattered, those that withered, how could they continue to be so dim? I am waiting for you all, I want to continue living, struggling with everything I have every day. I believe that you all will return, I will wait for you all to reappear in this world. Its heart was in great pain. This previously tyrannical and rough beast was actually crying now. It believed that there would be a day when it would see those people again. Because among them there were people who were still alive. How could those emperors who had dazzled through the ages fall? They even more so wouldn't let go of their past companions, coming back to save them, crossing the life and death bridge, guiding them back to life. However, when it thought of that life and death bridge, the black beast's heart pounded, its body trembling slightly. It had personally experienced it, close to it, truly understanding what that place signified. Could that person still return from the life and death bridge? That was a lonely bridge that floated in the great mist, the other side impossible to see, the end impossible to see. Everything was deathly silent, a boundless expanse. Even if one was heaven-warping and exceptional, they could only continue on the bridge, unable to fly across. Below the bridge, it was dark to the point of being terrifying, the abyss endless. How many heroes, how many prides of heaven, the most powerful individuals of a great era fell from there, their souls also returning, leaving behind only sorrow and hatred. Whenever it thought of this, the black beast would always feel uneasy. Even though it was full of hope, it also knew how terrifying that place was, known as the final resting place of celestial emperors. Even though it had confidence in that expert who had dazzled past and present, seeing that person's clothes white like snow, seeing that person cross a great era with each step, style unmatched, it still felt extremely apprehensive, carrying endless worry inside. The black beast didn't dare continue thinking about it. If that person also fell, one day falling into the endless abyss under the life and death bridge, the entire world would become dark, lacking life force. Back then, it had witnessed too much, also experienced too much. It followed at those individuals' side. What great changes, what eternal calamity, what eternal fall. It had witnessed it all, participated in it, knowing how terrifying and horrifying it was. At the end of some paths, there were some ancient paths that passed through the great mist that were actually prepared for celestial Emperor Zhongyi. When it recalled the events of the past, thinking about its past companions, thinking about those old friends, it couldn't help but think about the one who traveled before it. What happened to him? In the heavens above, that person sat on a copper coffin, crossing the sea, heading into the distance alone. The endless blood-colored sea surged with great waves, millions and millions of times more terrifying than the realm sea, witnessing the rise and fall of many realms. However, in the end, he disappeared, the higher realms gradually disappearing. Did he die in battle in a foreign land? That shouldn't be the case. This was because even though the black beast was in the sealed and collapsed world, It had vaguely sensed a strand of sword chi that was so sharp that it could suppress the past and present not too long ago. It had disturbed the heavens and shook the entire world of the living. However, after so many eras passed, where was that person? In the collapsed world, an indistinct sacrificial altar appeared, corpses everywhere. There were creatures that were like walking corpses that carried the black three-life medicine in their hands, sending it over. The so-called collapsed world was actually all projections. In the space on the forager's back, only an altar and some walking corpses truly existed. Everything else was extremely far away, unknown just how many spacetimes separated them, millions and millions of li could only be used as a unit of measurement. The three-life medicine was sent to that sacrificial altar that was covered in dried bloodstains. It was extremely damaged, having experienced battles in the past. Even if it was previously left behind by a supreme expert, it was still incredibly damaged now. That was why the first three-life medicine transmission actually failed. "Hurry!" urged the black beast. It was very anxious and also very apprehensive, itching to immediately revive the person lying on the broken bell and reappear in the world. At this moment, its mood was anxious and also intensely uneasy because it didn't know if this three-life medicine would be effective. After all, the person who died was too powerful. Was there still a medicinal herb in this world that could save him? Its heart was heavy, always feeling incomparably oppressed, a wave of weakness and powerlessness, a feeling that couldn't be resolved. Back then, you adopted me, allowing me to walk to a day where I dazzled the heavens from an ordinary and weak person, witnessing and experiencing the brilliance of life after life. In this life, I've come to redeem you and let you return. Even if I have to burn my true soul to recover the bit of aura you once left behind, I don't care if I have to extinguish my body, as long as I can gather your soul light once more. The black beast's voice was low and deep as it murmured, its aged face full of tear stains. When it thought of the past, it still couldn't forget it, nor could it accept it. How could their generation be so sorrowful and separated, actually falling to this state? Chapter 13:19. The giant black beast was extremely old. This was because its great Tao foundation was injured, the result of its illness. Otherwise, with its past strength, how could it struggle to survive every day? Old tears tumbled down from its dull and lifeless eyes, its words heavy and emotional. The era that belonged to them had passed. Even those individuals as powerful as the first-generation golden combination withered away, scattering. I am willing to die, never to appear again, as long as I can save you. It vowed, its voice deep and full of emotions. Its muddled old eyes gazed into the sky, recalling their era, their glory. On the altar, the black three-life medicine became indistinct again, about to be transported to the deathly still world the giant black beast resided in. "It's coming, I hope this time it's real, that it is a medicinal herb that can save an emperor's life." The giant black beast's voice was overcast. Its stooped body trembled, a bit uncertain, fearing that it would end up empty-handed again, only leaving behind despair and regret. In that deathly silent world, blood was everywhere. Much of it had long since dried up, but there were also some that were still bright red to this day. Some were terrifyingly black, while others carried a hazy halo of light. They were all the blood of unfathomable experts. The three-life medicine disappeared from the altar, but it wasn't transported to that world, instead landing in the middle of a cold and gloomy ruined star grave. There were star remains everywhere in that region, a shattered starry sky swirling with death energy. Repair the altar, continue the transportation. The giant black beast was furious, extremely impatient. There were walking corpses in that region, as well as even more ruined altars. They were quickly constructed, and the three-life medicine was placed on top again. The giant black beast stared rigidly at the three-life medicine. Even though it was far away, it was still carefully identifying it, excited to the point where its body was shaking. It reached out a large claw with difficulty, truly wishing to immediately grab it. Its body was shrinking. It released a long howl towards the heavens, unable to hide its excitement. Of course, there was also sadness. They had fallen to this state in the past. It was already this difficult to even continue living, needing to race against death every day. In this life, I will save you. Its words were resolute, already making preparations to die, wishing to extend the life of that male on the great bell. It was because that heavenly emperor's past soul light had already scattered, and now, it was going to burn its own true soul, refine the bit of aura he left behind back then, condense heaven's will again. While it was shrinking, a broken medicine furnace with a hole in it was already prepared, and it was already filled with all kinds of precious materials. If others knew about this, they would definitely be shocked. It was because in the medicinal furnace, there were medicinal herbs that had only appeared in legends since the ancient times, ores that were difficult to find a second time in this world, as well as the most precious treasures from various foreign lands. Any of the materials in the furnace were peerless treasures. It could be said that it contained rare materials from all the realms in the universe. It was rare to see one since ancient times. Not to mention the 3-life medicine, just this batch of supplementary materials had already been prepared by the Black Beast for countless years. Its value was extremely shocking, and it was likely that it would be difficult to gather such a batch of medicine again. The huge Black Beast had already started to refine the medicine. It was only missing the 3-life medicine, the main ingredient. In the fog, Chu Feng stared blankly at the collapsed world behind the forager. He already knew that it was only a projection, the real Black Beast was very far away. Chu Feng knew that once the small black wooden spear the length of a chopstick was transported over, it would be cooked into medicinal porridge, no longer existing. He felt extremely conflicted and distressed. For him, this was a great killing weapon that could be used to save his life, yet now, it was seized by someone to be used for medicine refinement. Right, the one who provided the medicinal herbs, what kind of background does he have? When the medicine refinement was about to begin, the huge Black Beast suddenly spoke. It seemed to have sensed something. It suddenly raised its head, projecting itself in Chu Feng's direction. Right now, Chu Feng wasn't directly facing it, only showing it the side of his face. "Hey you, how did you end up like this?" When the huge Black Beast saw the side of his face, it actually directly released a strange cry, meaning that it was extremely shocked. It wanted to reach out a large claw to grab Chu Feng away. However, in the end, they were separated by millions and millions of li of time and space. Moreover, it was injured to the point where it was about to die, so in the end, it didn't cast its figure down, only grabbing at him from the void. Could it be that I really don't have much time left? My eyes are blurred from old age. Why does he look so strange? You, what are you called? Turn around, let me see your true body. The huge Black Beast urged. Right now, Chu Feng was Chowda's body and didn't reveal his true appearance. When he heard this, he shivered inwardly. The other party was too sharp. Could it even see part of his true form? He directly pasted a handful of reincarnation earth on his face, fearing that he would be affected. That was because there were some ancient methods, some secret methods to control servants, and other things that would be effective as long as one's name, blood, and other things. He really was scared that he would be controlled unknowingly. No matter how he looked at it, this huge Black Beast was too unordinary. Hong Long. Suddenly, the great mist erupted. The 3-sided battlefield trembled, and the area Chu Feng was in shook violently. The sunset glow and the strange stars hung over the horizon appeared again. Chu Feng was shocked. Did that huge Black Beast take action, or was it a forager? He fell back, but now, he had lost the little black wooden spear, so it was indeed difficult for him to resist. And something was wrong. In that instant, he sensed that the void was actually splitting apart, and a mysterious passage appeared. It was also like a projection, extremely faint, but it was descending. This wasn't done by the huge black beast, but by someone else. Why did it feel somewhat familiar? Why did he feel a special charm? Chu Feng's heart trembled. In the blink of an eye, he knew what it was. That was a path related to reincarnation. The next moment, he decisively removed the reincarnation earth from his face and stored it in a stone jar. His body crackled as he retreated continuously into the great mist. Was this really a reincarnation path? It was about to appear and descend upon this place. Chu Feng felt extreme danger. He retreated continuously into the depths of the great mist and sank into the ground without a care for anything else. That forager didn't follow him again. Swoosh. Chu Feng wanted to leave with the help of domains. He didn't think too much about the little black wooden spear or the huge black beast. He believed that there was going to be a great storm here and that the reincarnation hunters were coming for revenge. Unfortunately, he failed. He was blocked after traveling several dozen kilometers underground. Both the sky and the ground were emitting a hazy halo of light. Chu Feng frowned. This was a damaged golden symbol that was suppressing this place. It looked similar to the characters on the giant stone grindstone within the deathly light. However, what he saw before him was damaged and incomplete. There were a few golden symbols sealing this place. He could sense that the golden light was pouring down from the sky and illuminating all directions. It was incomparably tyrannical as it locked down the sky and earth. The sky became increasingly resplendent as the damaged golden symbols blossomed. That path was no longer indistinct and was becoming increasingly clear. It was about to descend here. It's coming out. Chu Feng was shaken. He directly entered the stone jar and hid. He was worried that there would be a great battle here and everything might collapse. But very soon, he drove the stone jar and rushed into a large tent. He brought the unconscious Yushang away and went into hibernation once again. Boom! Moments later, a clear ancient path descended. It was quite similar to the reincarnation path Chu Feng had walked through, but it was definitely not that one. It was quiet and lifeless. Those damaged golden symbols were faintly discernible. This left Chu Feng shocked and bewildered. It seemed like even though the other party didn't obtain the complete one, he still comprehended many secrets. This made him set the resolution that he had to completely comprehend it when he returned. He grasped the complete golden symbols. Since ancient times, who has dared humiliate reincarnation and wipe out the hunters we sent out? A calm voice rang through the three sides of the battlefield, making everyone feel great restraining fear. The forager raised his head. Meanwhile, the roar of that enormous black beast could be heard from the collapsed world behind him. It was urging the three-life medicine to be sent over, fearing that something unexpected would happen. "Don't you want to come and ask for forgiveness?" That voice sounded again. It didn't reveal its true body, only a sphere of mist. However, a group of reincarnation hunters appeared in its surroundings. "Ask for forgiveness? You dare ask for forgiveness from us?" The enormous black beast roared, as if it was incomparably furious. Even though it was impatient and wanted to immediately seize the three-life medicine, it still responded, stalling for time. If it was on its own, it wouldn't fear the creatures on the reincarnation path. If it wasn't because its body was unwell, it would have long since attacked. It was because this type of condemnation, this type of descending and looking down on them, was a humiliation towards the past golden generation. Even those behind reincarnation couldn't do this. Chu Feng was greatly shaken. This was the first time he saw a player on the reincarnation path. It was difficult to imagine how powerful a creature of this level was, yet that enormous black beast actually dared to challenge him without fear. No one can be an exception. Who doesn't reincarnate in this world? What's wrong with asking for forgiveness? On that ancient path, the figure in the mist spoke coldly and normally, overlooking everything below. Within the mist, a pair of green and emotionless eyes were revealed. "It's not like we haven't slaughtered our way into reincarnation before. I admit that the waters there are deep. The true reincarnation existed before the age of Emperor collapsed. Perhaps not even you know as much as we do. You dare ask for forgiveness from us? The enormous black beast spoke, extremely aloof. At the same time, it calmed down. You care a lot about that little black wooden spear. Are you stalling for time? On the ancient path, within the mist, that creature spoke, becoming cold and forceful, the green pupils a bit frightening. It was because his spiritual senses were too sharp. That enormous black beast was arrogant, its roots deep. It originally looked down on all things, but now it was purposely speaking more, only caring about that black wooden spear. Chi. The enormous black beast no longer paid him any attention, quickly taking action. It reached out a large claw, about to project itself over, wishing to directly seize the three-life medicine. However, it was too tired, striving to live through each day. Meanwhile, the great Tao of the heavens fell together, injuring its foundation. Right now it was too old, a bit powerless. This claw actually didn't succeed, but it exhausted too much of its power. Hung! A cold snort sounded. On the ancient path, within the mist, that figure erupted with endless light. Moreover, the ancient path extended forward, rushing into the collapsed world. That forager couldn't stop it. Hong. The ancient path extended outwards, boundless and endless. That creature brought a group of reincarnation hunters into the ruined star grave, grabbing towards the three-life medicine. You dare! The enormous black beast roared angrily, its body swaying, already unable to stand stably. However, it still did everything it could. Its turbid old eyes released a terrifying radiance, seizing that three-life medicine from millions and millions of li away. The three-life medicine flew towards it, but halfway through, it stopped in the void star remains. That ancient path shone, golden symbols erupting, about to lock down the three-life medicine. In the mist, that person stood on the ancient path, wishing to seize the little black wooden spear. Those who touch reincarnation will all meet a pitiful end. He calmly spoke. If the creature behind the most ancient reincarnation said these words to me, I might still hesitate, but you dare disrespect us like this? The enormous black beast roared. In reality, it was extremely powerless, feeling extremely miserable. It really was old and weak, this era already no longer its past glorious years. Even its own survival was a great problem. Do you have something special? On the ancient path, that figure said coldly. You don't understand because you are ignorant. You don't have the qualifications. Back then, we even killed immortals of the high heavens and bathed in the blood of the creatures of that world. Your ancestors and countless others probably only had descendants like you because of our protection. The enormous black beast spoke, its voice a bit downcast and also a bit sad. It actually fell to this state, unable to fight, too weak. In the past, why would it need to say so much? It could just directly take action. However, for the sake of reviving the male on the ruined bell, it didn't hesitate to continuously speak like this, even bringing out a few of its past accomplishments. It felt sorrowful, and also extremely fretful, worried that something unforeseen might happen, scared that the male on the ruined bell would miss out on this chance to revive. How would you understand high heavens? Even those up there cannot look down on reincarnation. The male on the ancient path clearly realized that the little black wooden spear was extremely important to the enormous beast, doing everything he could to seize it. The ancient path shone, extending forward. He stood above, continuously approaching the three-life medicine, about to seize it. You dare humiliate us? Even though I am old, no longer the me from back then, not the me who slaughtered my way into high immortal age, if you want to seize my great medicine, I can still send you to your death. The enormous black beast roared. Originally, it still wanted to leave behind a bit of power to refine medicine, burn its own true soul, exchange for the male on the great bell's corpse to revive, even if there was only a sliver of a chance. However now, even the three-life medicine, the main ingredient, was about to be lost, so how could it endure this? It immediately erupted with power. Following a beast roar, a large black claw reached out millions and millions of li, slapping towards that ancient path. It was just too terrifying, unprecedented. I insist on seizing it. I want to see what an old fella like you whose blood energy has withered, body is about to rot into dust can do to me. The creature on the reincarnation path sneered, erupting with dazzling golden light. The ancient path extended, smashing forward. However, right at this moment, in the depths of the collapsed world, the body of the male on the ruined bell trembled slightly. His back was still facing everyone, but his hair rose slightly. You returned? Are you alive? When the enormous black beast saw this scene, it was moved to the point of crying out, old tears tumbling down. However, it quickly learned that it wasn't that person who revived, but rather that the ruined bell was trembling slightly, making the corpse of the male on top tremble a bit. Hong! A bell wave blasted outwards. It was too resplendent, too intense, illuminating the past, present, and future. The enormous black beast shed tears, its old eyes turbid. It hated itself for declining to this extent, lacking power. At this moment, it was actually that male's ruined bell that rang on its own. This was extremely terrifying. With a hong sound, everything that stood in its way exploded, including the reincarnation path. At this moment, the heavens were all rumbling, everything trembling. All life in this world were trembling, about to kneel down. Moreover, for some reason, there was a type of sadness. The enormous black beast carried a sobbing tone as it muttered, "Your back is facing all life, because you have been fighting on the front lines your entire life, facing the most powerful and undefeatable enemy. Behind you is the Pure Land, and in front of you, the heavens are burning, the broken path is covered in blood, the boundless killing tribulation is endless. Behind you, all life is eternal peace, this is you, your back is facing all life." That enormous black beast was trembling, tears falling. It knew that after this bell rang, it didn't need to exhaust the last bit of its strength to take action. That day, in the heavens above and earth below, all creatures heard this bell sound. There was an extremely ancient existence that was startled awake, its voice trembling as it said, "That person, his bell has rung again." Even the first mountain, number 9 and the others were shocked as well. Chapter 13:20. That man's corpse laid on top of the ruined bell, unable to get up again. He had been dead for many years. His past glory and resplendent past had all become the smoke of history. However, his damaged bell was trembling, moving, rumbling with noise. At this moment, the heavens above and earth below were shaken. The damaged bell still had a spirit, and the sound waves swept out in all directions. The first mountain, the various restricted zones, and even the even more mysterious creatures from the other lands were all shaken to the core. It was because this bell sound was too grand and majestic. More importantly, its origins were great beyond compare. How many years had passed, how many eras had passed. It didn't belong to this great era, yet it could still sound again. Vaguely, the invincible man who had his back to all living beings, who had never been defeated in his life, who had triumphantly advanced all the way, and who had swept through the heavens and the realms, had returned. The sound of the bell rumbled. At this moment, the heavens above and the earth below were filled with its echoes, shaking all lands. Even the great evil spirit, the grey mist, and the creatures of darkness that came from the foreign lands were horrified, unable to help but tremble. That resplendent flourishing age, the era when several heavenly emperors traveled together, even though it had already passed, those who truly witnessed that great era, the experts who read those historical records, there wasn't a single one who wasn't shaken. There were some people who were truly shockingly talented, from past to present, people who had to respect and submit to them. What a pity, he still died in the end. Otherwise, who could compete against him? Someone said with a sigh. This was definitely a creature that had lived for an extremely long time. his origins unimaginable. There were also people whose eyes were brimming with hot tears. This was an old soldier whose body was damaged, having injuries that couldn't be healed. Right now, his emotions were incredibly stirred up, his voice trembling. Heavenly Emperor fell back then. After so many years, his bell actually sounded again. The monarch horoscope is gone. When will I be able to witness your supreme brilliance again? Will you come back? Someone cried out in grief. He already didn't have long to live, but today, he was woken up by this bell sound. He was shocked, but also inwardly grieved, tears continuously falling. At this moment, the entire world was shaken. Even in this current world, the living beings in the various parts of the Yang realm didn't know the origins of this bell since a long time ago, and they didn't know this person at all. But when they heard the bell now, they still felt a sense of sorrow, and some sort of emotion was aroused. In a trance, people felt that this was an ancient sage who should have been solemnly worshipped, but was forgotten by the world, buried by time. Boom! Without a doubt, this bell was peerless. Although it did not attack other parts of the world, it targeted the living beings on the path of reincarnation. There was a group of reincarnation hunters there, and they were all experts. However, as soon as the bell waves spread out, they all exploded. This was extremely horrifying. One had to bear in mind that this was a reincarnation hunter, someone who dared to personally visit sects at every turn to capture great figures who escaped reincarnation with their memories. However now, they were like scarecrows, like ants, just too weak. Under this bell wave, they were blasted into powder, becoming nothing. The group of reincarnation hunters had been annihilated in both body and soul. They didn't even have the chance to make a splash before they died miserably in an instant. As for that strange ancient path, it was immediately severed. The expert who stood on it, his entire body shining with resplendent golden light, that terrifying creature that wanted to steal the 3-life medicine, was also struck and exploded. What kind of power was this? The waters of the path of reincarnation were too deep, and its origins were ancient and unverifiable. However, this person was able to command and control a group of hunters, so his identity and strength were naturally extremely impressive. Yet now, his body was disintegrating. Blood splashed in all directions, filling a large expanse. One has to understand that once this kind of person appeared, even some of the old ancestors of the various sects in the Yang realm would be terrified. They would tremble with fear and have to personally welcome him. Yet now, his physical body exploded, and even his soul light was shattered by the bell wave. Then, it burned, and he was about to turn into ashes, dying miserably. This damaged bell, at the final juncture, he was terrified. He weakly released a soul tremble because he recalled the ancient book he had read before. He clearly knew who it was. That person's great bell had once resounded through the heavens and earth. 10,000 races were intimidated into submission. Who could contend against him? It was actually him. This person's back was facing all life, and he had always been moving forward, expanding territory and fighting bloody battles with unknown creatures from beyond this region, sweeping through all enemies. That was a legend, a supreme being of legend. Who dared to disrespect him? Who dared to oppose him? Even someone like you dares to blaspheme the Emperor's corpse and act so unbridled towards us back then? Sure enough, that enormous black beast's ice-cold berating voice transmitted over. It was just like the legends. It was exactly like this, so why didn't they recognize it earlier? This was the enormous black beast that followed at Sky Emperor's side in the past. On the broken reincarnation path, the sound of remorse and fear transmitted from within the bloody mist and burning soul light. That expert was dejected and scared. He knew he was done for. Not to mention you, even the person behind you can't come out. Only those things at the end of reincarnation will make people feel restraining fear and alert. The enormous black beast spoke. The bell waves shook, and the reincarnation path that extended out broke apart inch by inch. Then, it loudly exploded and was completely destroyed. This was truly too terrifying. That was an ancient path that extended out from a mysterious place. Since ancient times, who could destroy it? However, the corpse of the man on the damaged bell didn't move. The weapon that had followed him in battle in the past rang out lightly, and its bell waves blasted apart the ancient path. The expert on the ancient path died miserably. His blood and soul were completely erased by the bell waves, not leaving behind a single drop. This was extremely terrifying. This person was related to the power on the reincarnation path, but now, he couldn't even reincarnate after dying miserably. 1. However, right at this moment, a sphere of mist appeared where the reincarnation path was destroyed. It was extremely strange, and a pitch-black hole appeared, revealing a tattered banner. This was a damaged artifact that looked like a soul-summoning banner. It was extremely old, and the damage was severe. There was only a small segment left, and it was entirely pitch-black as if it came from the depths of hell. It carried a boundless cold aura, eerie and terrifying. What? It's this thing? It actually came out again. At this time, the enormous black beast in the collapsed world was extremely shocked. It was nervous, clearly recognizing that tattered pitch-black soul-summoning banner. Dang. At this moment the damaged bell shook again. Bell waves swept out, many times more violent than before. In the end, the bell waves and the soul-summoning banner silently collided. They were annihilated where they were, blasting open a shocking hole. The scene was too terrifying. At this time, not to mention other creatures, even if a heavenly deity or a great figure entered, they would probably be instantly evaporated, becoming the dust of history. However, this attack didn't spread. It all happened in front of the soul-summoning banner, and then it completely disappeared. In the end, the black and damaged soul-summoning banner entered the black hole, directly disappearing. The world returned to its original brightness. There seems to be something in the depths of the road of reincarnation. Back then, the Forerunner carved words on this road to warn the later generations. Indeed, they all came true. The enormous black beast spoke. Back then, the Forerunner sat in a bronze coffin and crossed the sea alone. However, he suspected that there was something else in the depths of the road of reincarnation. He had searched and searched, but he couldn't find anything. The enormous black beast and its master, as well as several heavenly emperors, had also entered the depths of the road of reincarnation to fight. However, in the end, they only found some clues when they reached the Spirit River. That pitch-black soul-summoning banner was perhaps only the tip of the iceberg. Forget it, the heavens have already gone to war, and the high heavens immortals have been killed. What kind of enemies haven't I seen? What kind of opponents haven't I fought? Moreover, this is ultimately not our era. If there are any changes, I can't care so much. Following that, the enormous black beast was in extreme pain. Its eyes dimmed and its old vision blurred. Looking at the man's corpse on the broken bell, it felt a wave of heartache and sorrow. Could he still be saved? That was an emperor's fate. Even the three-life medicine might not necessarily succeed. Moreover, just now, when the broken bell vibrated, it smelled a rotting odor, causing its heart to be greatly grieved and incomparably uncomfortable. In the past, how majestic was that person! He was unrivaled under the heavens, his entire life shining brilliantly. Who would have thought that he would fall and die in the final battle? Even his corpse had rotted away. This was simply unimaginable. In its impression, that man was incomparable and would never die. He would always stand at the highest point of the world, an unsurpassable monument. However, reality was extremely cruel. The golden generation of the past withered away just like that. Several heavenly emperors were parted in life and death. In reality, the outside world was already in an uproar. The entire world was shaken, trembling, and great earthquakes were happening everywhere. Many people saw a group of reincarnators being crushed to death like ants, turning into ashes. The person leading them also directly exploded. Even the road of reincarnation was broken and destroyed. What kind of power was this? Since ancient times, there were several existences that shook the great eras. This should be one of them, right? Someone guessed. Meanwhile, a few extremely ancient existences, when they were roused awake, their lips trembling, silently muttering a name. Then, they trembled endlessly. There were some who reminisced about that era, feeling sorrow for the owner of the broken bell. There were also some who were scared, terrified. When that man was alive, he had previously made the heavens tremble. At the scene, Chu Feng saw everything clearly, feeling deeply moved. Even though he was dead, this person still had such power. It really was too terrifying, truly heaven-defying. This was breaking the road of reincarnation. It was caused by the broken bells ringing. In this life, I will save you. The giant black beast shouted loudly. Even though it was extremely weak, right now, it raised its spirit, straightening its stooped back. It didn't hesitate to sacrifice itself to try and save that man. So, no one stopped it. It finally brought the 3-life medicine before its eyes. With a ping sound, it threw the small black wooden spear into the medicine furnace. Inside, there were all types of exceptional medicinal ingredients and ores, all of them already starting to boil. A sweet fragrance wafted through the air. This was a furnace of great medicine that could change the fate of the most powerful. These materials might not even be enough for a second furnace. If it wasn't for several heavenly emperors roaming the endless realms in the past, they wouldn't have been able to gather this type of great medicine. Chu Feng watched impatiently. Through the projection, he could see that giant black beast's every movement. His small black wooden spear completely became a medicinal ingredient. It truly was a pity. He released a light sigh inside. This was the weapon he used to protect himself. Where is he? Where did he go? I still wanted to see the true appearance of the one who provided the 3-life medicine. The giant black beast refined the medicine while activating a wave of strange fiery light. At the same time, it searched for Chu Feng. Then, it opened its mouth and said, "Come out, I believe that you are definitely nearby. If you don't come out, I will dig 3 feet into the ground, have the foragers search inch by inch." Chu Feng was speechless. He really was here. The stone jar he was hiding in was extremely heaven-defying. Even the giant black beast's divine senses blocked outside. However, the shape of this stone jar was too special. If the foragers really dug into the ground, they could indeed find him. Seeing the foragers move, Chu Feng was helpless. In the end, he appeared on the surface and put away the stone jar immediately. "My eyesight is a bit blurry recently. I can't see clearly. Come closer." The giant black beast stared at Chu Feng. The more it stared, the stranger its expression became. At the same time, it threatened Chu Feng to quickly reveal his true appearance and let it see clearly. "You might as well just come over here." In the end, it was forced to use its own methods to carve spatial runes and use teleportation techniques to bring Chu Feng to its own location. Moreover, it acted swiftly and decisively, directly putting its plan into action. Where is this? The next moment, Chu Feng was bewildered. He was inexplicably transported to a dusky space. It was definitely not the world where the giant black beast was. I haven't made a move in a long time. I'm a bit rusty. Don't worry, you will appear in front of me in the next moment. After all, I was a peerless formation emperor back then," the giant black beast said. Then, it made its move again. But the next moment Chu Feng was stunned. He found himself in a hazy world of mist. He felt that he was even further away from the giant black beast. He could still see its projection, but the two seemed to be separated by billions of miles of space and time. Where is this? A mistake. Why is there so much deviation? My old habit is acting up again. At the critical moment, there's a problem with the transportation technique. It's going in the opposite direction. The giant black beast muttered to itself. It did not realize its mistake at all. Once again, it began to fiddle around, wanting to bring Chu Feng before it. However, in the next moment, Chu Feng was speechless. This time, it was even more ridiculous. The giant black beast's projection became more and more blurry. It was almost impossible to see it clearly. Evidently, the distance between the two was increasing. Deity Emperor, where are you sending me? Quiet! The giant black beast was impatient. In fact, it was blushing to hide its embarrassment. It had made a mistake again. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Chu Feng disappeared once again and appeared in an ineffable ancient land. He was on the verge of tears. This black beast was too unreliable. If this went on, he would definitely be teleported away. At that time, how was he going to return? Was he going to wander alone in the boundless, desolate, and destroyed universe? My formations have long been invincible. This emperor is number one in heaven and earth. How could I make a mistake? The giant black beast spoke. It was a little unconvinced and tried to hide its embarrassment. Next, after 2 more teleportations, Chu Feng's face turned pale. He found that he was about to lose the last connection with his original coordinate. He really had no idea where he was going. Why don't you wait there first? Let me save the celestial emperor first. The giant black beast finally gave up. It left Chu Feng alone in the dark and unknown land of death in the dark universe and began to concentrate on refining medicine. Chu Feng's face alternated between green and white. He really didn't know whether he should rejoice that it had finally stopped or cry. What was this? He was inexplicably exiled to a foreign land? After an unknown period of time, he saw the vague projection of the black beast. It had finished concocting the medicine and was trembling as it walked towards the corpse of the man lying on the broken bell. The black beast stood up like a human, but its back was severely hunched. It held the medicine furnace and was about to save the man. It wanted to sacrifice itself in exchange for the resurrection of this man. However, it didn't know if this man could truly come back to life after its death. Dong! As it approached, the broken bell rang. It was extremely grand, but there was no hostility. Clearly, it was very familiar with the giant black beast. It was like an old friend greeting it. Moreover, it once again shook the heavens and earth. Even though Chu Feng was far away, he could still hear the bell waves. At this time, he felt that time was boundless, without beginning and without end. That man's great Tao was unfathomable and boundlessly grand. It was simply too terrifying. You must resurrect. I will bring you back in this life. The giant black beast's voice was trembling. Its body was trembling out of fear of failure. It supported the man up with difficulty and poured great medicine into his mouth. If it was anyone else, there was no way they could approach this man. Even if they died, they would still be blasted into pieces by his aura. However, this giant black beast was raised by him. It was contaminated with his aura, so it wouldn't be attacked or destroyed. I beg you, you must resurrect me. It was sobbing as it prayed and mumbled. Muddy old tears rolled down. Chapter 13:21. The giant black beast glanced at the direction where Chu Feng disappeared and mumbled to itself. My eyes are blurry from old age, I can't see clearly anymore. I'll send you a bit further away to leave behind some hope that isn't really hope. You seem a bit strange, so I'll leave behind some hope before I die. Then, it lowered its head and looked at this familiar yet majestic man who had been silent for countless eras. At that moment, it almost shed tears again. The man who had once dominated the heavens and earth, how could he fall to such a state? This made its heart sour and filled it with endless sorrow. I beg you, open your eyes and reappear in this world. How many difficult years, how many darkest moments, we've been through them all. I beg you, you must come back to life. The giant black beast was trembling, its lips trembling. It was terrified, worried that the worst would happen. After experiencing countless eras, it finally managed to gather this cauldron of great medicine. All of its blood, sweat, and tears were about to be verified at this moment. The medicinal fragrance was very special, causing even the void to tremble. This was no longer an ordinary medicinal herb, it was as if it was refining the Tao, fighting against the heavens for its life. The heavens and earth were trembling and rumbling. The middle-aged man's hair was disheveled, the bloodstains on his body had long dried up. He finally faced all living beings, yet he had died without a trace of vitality. Moreover, there was a strong smell of decay on his body. It was hard to imagine how the corpse of a heavenly monarch could rot, to the point of being erased from this world. The battle back then was unfathomable. Everything he had experienced had surpassed the limits of what a cultivator could face. Even though he was revered as a heavenly monarch, it was still not enough. He still fell to this state. In that darkest moment, in that despairing era, he blocked the way, paying a terrifying price as a result. The man who had once dominated the heavens, the one who had risen to the peak at the end of the great Tao, yet his final outcome was so cruel. The giant black beast fed him medicine. A special medicinal fragrance spread, resonating with the heavens and earth. Then, the world trembled, and a special life domain appeared in this region. If it was an ordinary creature, they would be able to preserve their damaged body after death and directly be reborn, reappearing in this world. But now the Emperor horoscope was being fought over, it was too difficult. With a boom, this special region exploded, even the sky was shattered. You have to succeed and come back to life. The enormous black beast was anxious and scared. Its muddy old eyes were full of fear, worried that it would fail. The fragrance of the medicinal liquid actually became faint, and it was difficult to drink it down. Moreover, the most frightening thing was that a mouthful of stinky black blood flowed out of the man's mouth. It was this mouthful of pus and blood that diluted the medicinal fragrance, annihilating the essence of the medicine, causing it to become dim and finally emit a fishy smell. No! The giant black beast was terrified. Its old eyes were filled with unwillingness and horror. For a moment its eyes were lifeless, and it was extremely afraid. How can this be? You have to come back to life. Many people are waiting for you to reappear in this world. Even though the people of our era have all died and passed away in meditation, many people still hope that you can come back to life. The giant black beast waited for the black-red, putrid blood to flow out of its mouth before it gulped down the liquid again. After a few mouthfuls, a unique fragrance finally wafted out. The putrid smell on the man's body was slightly fainter, which made the beast tremble in excitement. This cauldron of medicine was indeed effective. Meanwhile, in the dim sky above, another explosion occurred. The cauldron of medicine affected the vitality of the heavens and earth. A huge and blurry life magnetic field spun. It was unknown who it was fighting against, but it was trying to reunite with the man from back then. It's working, it will definitely succeed. The giant black beast became even more determined, hoping that the man would wake up, open his eyes, and return to this world. At this moment, an endless rain of light sprinkled down from the cauldron of medicinal liquid, enveloping this place. As the giant black beast continued to pour the medicine into the man's mouth, the fragrance gradually became stronger. The putrid smell was covered up, and the vitality of this place became a lot stronger. At the same time, it was extremely terrifying. Thunder rumbled endlessly in the sky, as if the heavens and earth were being penetrated, as if some power, something was about to descend. Come back, you were previously unmatched. Even the end of death couldn't trap you. I believe that you didn't truly leave. You are still here, only sleeping. You will definitely wake up. Chilly winds roared angrily, and countless irregular scenes appeared. It was as if a great era, an entire history of the past, was crushing down from beyond the heavens. All types of scenes appeared, too terrifying. In addition, a rain of blood immediately poured down. Darkness descended, rushing towards that middle-aged man. The giant black beast poured medicine into his mouth. Its eyes carried fear, worry, and even more despair. It continuously roared out the word, revive. In that instant, the world became extremely dark. Only a hazy light shone around this man. That was a cauldron of great medicine that was releasing an unimaginable vitality. This cauldron seemed to contain the life aura of an entire realm. This moment has finally arrived. In this life, I will save you and return your kindness. The giant black beast's voice was trembling. Having reached this step, it wanted to fulfill its own oath. Even if it had to die, it still wanted to try and carry out its final effort. It wanted to burn its own soul light and condense all of that man's imprints and aura that it was contaminated with throughout its life. It wanted to return it to him and use this cauldron of great medicine to revive him. At this time, its dim old eyes released bits of divine radiance. It turned around and looked in the direction Chu Feng disappeared into. Stay far away from this place. I hope I didn't see wrongly in my absent-minded state. Now, no one wants to see my final appearance. I want to quietly go on my way alone. It spoke softly. It was a bit sad and desolate. It was previously domineering and glorious, overlooking all races, but now it was already past its prime. For the sake of saving this man, it didn't hesitate to pay any price. Chu Feng vaguely felt as if there was a pair of eyes without any vitality looking in this direction from millions and millions of li away. Ignite my soul light, illuminate the ancient path of fallen emperor, and bring you back. At this moment, the giant black beast took action. Flames emerged from its body from the inside out. That was soul light being ignited, faintly pulsing, illuminating its face that had long become incredibly old. Right now, it didn't feel any pain, only calmness. It thought of too many things. Back then, just how high-spirited and vigorous were they? In an age where immortal ascension was impossible, they defied the heavens, walking on the path of long life. In that age, their sex all succeeded, slaughtering their way into immortal domain. From then on, they advanced triumphantly. At that time, it was powerful to the extreme. There were enemies who wanted to subdue it, but in the end, it instead took in a group of human pets, carrying a palanquin, serving at its side. In that age, it was extremely domineering, never willing to yield. When it was forced into a corner, it even dared to bite its own people, even daring to bite the celestial emperor. It similarly chased after them all over the world. When it recalled these things, it cracked open its large mouth, silently laughing. Then, it cried again. Those beautiful times of youth, those times that made one reminisce about them, the glory that belonged to them, the brilliance that belonged to them, they were also finally buried in the passage of time. The golden generation came to an end. This was completely unimaginable in the past. No one would believe that they were all withering away on their own, each leaving with the passage of time, that there would be a day when they would disappear. Everyone believed that they were destined to be eternal, that they couldn't be surpassed. Even the immortals of the heavens were killed, so who else could do anything to them? When it thought about those cheers and laughter, thought about yesterday's brilliance, its face carried a peaceful smile. It became more and more calm, not feeling the slightest bit of sadness of dying or passing away. However, even though it was brilliant in this life, there were also regrets. In the end, it couldn't personally watch the male before it revive, so it could only go on its way first. At the same time, it also thought about some old events of the past, those sad, tearful past. The white-clothed divine kings and unyielding emperors, they had long gone on their way. There were also the children it liked, the ones it nurtured. They grew up, but what were their endings? Among them, there were the heirs of the celestial emperor, those with great Yin and great Yang bloodlines, natural-born holy children, flawless Tao cores. All of these were things it placed high hopes on, watching them grow up. In the end, it didn't disappoint its expectations, these people all able to stand on their own, dazzling the world. However, before the final battle, these people's paths were also cut short. There were some who shed blood, some who wandered about in foreign lands, their final endings unknown. There were some who perhaps were destined to never appear in this world again, completely withered away and died. When it thought of these things, it wanted to cry inwardly. Those were its children, the next generation's leaders that were carefully nurtured. However, there were people who survived. They will find you all in the end, bring you all back into this world. In the end, there was still hope within its sadness. Since it existed since the ancient times, it believed that if the brilliant ancient empress crossed the bridge of life and death, she would also be able to bring those people back. Burn my true soul, according to your path, bring you home. In the final scene of a person about to die, the enormous black beast muttered to itself, wishing to bring that person back. Under the fiery light, its aged face was extremely clear. Even though it looked calm, how could it truly be willing? It didn't fear life and death, but in the end, it still couldn't see those old friends again. Even though times changed, even the most powerful existences would pass away one day, no one able to last long, gradually fading into the distance, disappearing from this world. However, it still felt sad for those people. It wasn't for itself, it only wanted to see the continuation of their glory. Raging flames burned. Even though what was burning was soul fire, its physical body was also withering and declining. Its body became more and more crooked as it rapidly aged and was about to pass away. At this moment, the outside world was already in a state of chaos. Not long ago, after the peerless sword radiance slashed out from the first mountain, the sound of that person's bell rang out again. It truly shook every region of the Yang realm. Everyone felt as if they were being baptized by the sound of a great golden bell, as if they were being purified. All of their ears were ringing and their soul light violently trembled. The creatures that had lived for the longest time were all whispering softly, all of them very shocked. There were also some who were sentimental. Those were the crippled old soldiers who knew the truth. It was impossible for them to have complete limbs in this lifetime because they were killed by the great Tao. Old soldiers don't die, they only gradually wither away. Someone muttered to himself. After he heard the sound of the bell, he came back to his senses. His face was already full of tears, and such a person was trembling as he said, "Our essence, chi, and spirit will always exist, but we don't know if we can still wait until the day you reappear in this world. There aren't many people left from our era." At this moment, in the dusky world, that enormous black beast was offering sacrifices and burning its own true soul. It had already reached the final juncture. At this moment, its face was also full of tears, and its mouth was chanting an ancient war song. It was as if it had returned to the era when they shook the world, and the people of the golden generation had reappeared. In the end, its eyes slowly dimmed and its lips stopped moving. Its entire head gradually drooped down. It tried its best to raise its head and take one last look at that man, but it failed. It was old and decayed to the point where it didn't have a shred of strength left. It couldn't move anymore and was about to pass away forever. It knew that the instant it closed its eyes, it would never appear again. No one could save it because its soul had been completely burned away. At this moment, that man suddenly opened his eyes. He suddenly raised his head, and in a split second, heaven and earth collapsed. The wind and clouds lost their color, and a torrential rain of blood flowed in reverse. The sun and moon lost their light, the firmament exploded into pieces, and the earth caved in. But his eyes were still so cold and emotionless. They emitted two terrifying and emotionless ice-cold beams of light that made even the heavens tremble. Also, continue writing. Please remember this book's domain name. Third Sect Masters Mobile Version. Chapter 1322. Heaven and earth exploded as if the end of the world was coming. The sky dome collapsed, the thick great earth caving in, as if they reached the limits of the cosmos, arriving at the end of time. Everything was going to be destroyed, no longer existing. All of this was because of this man's revival. He opened his eyes. His pupils were so demonic, as if they could destroy all living things in the world. As soon as he opened his eyes, the sky collapsed and the earth caved in. Chilly winds howled angrily, and a rain of blood poured down from the heavens. Heaven and earth darkened. This scene was too terrifying. It was as if a matchless demon had revived, wishing to slaughter all life and throw the past, present, and future into chaos. The giant black beast's heart palpitated, and then it trembled. Because that pair of eyes blossomed with ice-cold light, that kind of ruthlessness, it was definitely not the Sky Emperor it was familiar with. It was like another soul. However, right now, it didn't have much strength left, its head hanging down, unable to raise its head to look. It could only feel a bone-chilling coldness. That gaze looked towards it. The black beast was in despair. It was trying its best to survive, trying to hold on for a moment longer, just to see the person it admired and was familiar with. But now, who did it save? This was not its great emperor. There was great hatred in its heart. The truth was actually so cold and cruel. Could it be that it summoned the opponent's remnant soul, and borrowed the celestial emperor's body to return to the sun? Or could it be that this living being that was filled with malice, a tyrannical aura, and a boundless killing power had originally resided in the heavenly emperor body? Now that it had the chance, it had awakened and fully revived? The enormous black beast wanted to cry out, but its throat was dry and withered. It couldn't even release the weakest sound. Its soul was on the verge of exhaustion, and only a tiny bit was left. It was filled with hatred. How many eras had it done so many people to gather this great medicine, yet in the end, it didn't save the person it wanted to save, but instead revived the enemy. Darkness surrounded the great earth. The darkest hour arrived. A rain of blood poured down, flying into the sky. This was extremely terrifying, rushing out from underground. In addition, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Blood-colored lightning interweaved streak after streak in the darkness, pouring down in torrents. This was extremely horrifying. For a moment, the corpses of former enemies and some ancient people whose memories were blurred actually appeared in the dark blood-colored lightning, floating in the dark sky. It was as if he had descended from the heavens and appeared here. The black beast struggled to hold on, not letting the last bit of its life force go out. When it saw these creatures and the strange phenomenon, its eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Many of them were enemies. What had it done? He saved his enemy, but attracted the remnant souls of his enemies? No. It could only roar out a single word like this. When it reached the outside world, it was extremely weak, almost inaudible. It couldn't endure this. This was an unendurable conclusion. The middle-aged man in front of it was cold and emotionless, but he did not attack it. He only looked at it coldly. Boundless black mist appeared. This middle-aged man was like an unrivaled demon lord that descended into this world, just too terrifying. When his mouth and nose moved, the aura he exhaled made the sky dome explode. No, could this be the legendary darkness awakening? No. The black beast cried out weakly. It was extremely angry, extremely hateful, and terrified. It was incomparably regretful. If that was the case, it would have been better not to save this Heaven Emperor. Could it be that by doing this, it caused the Sky Emperor to turn dark, the opposing side appearing in this world? That would be extremely terrifying, and its lethality would be extremely shocking. This was especially the case if it encountered an old friend, not understanding the situation. Even if the other 2 or 3 Heaven Emperors revived, they might still encounter misfortune, die miserably under its hands. At this moment, in the extremely distant unknown ruined cosmos, Chu Feng felt a wave of uneasiness. It was because that giant black beast's projection had just become dim. Moreover, it was just that sudden, directly disappearing. Were they going to leave him here and let him fend for himself? However, this place seemed to have some sort of secret. It was extremely strange. While looking at the star graveyard and the boundless giant remains at the limits of the dusky cosmos, he felt that some type of ancient history was recorded here. It was worth flipping through. However, being thrown into the foreign realm like this still made him feel extremely uncomfortable. This was especially the case when he always felt that there was a mysterious fluctuation in that projected world. It surged over again, actually making his scalp go numb. What was currently happening there? His imagination ran wild, a wave of suspicions emerging. At this time, in the dark world, the blood-colored lightning became more and more terrifying, as if it hacked down from an uncivilized era, streaking across endless time and space, interweaving into this world. That man's hair was disheveled, already standing at the side of the broken bell. His eyes became more and more terrifying. Each time he turned his head and changed direction, his gaze would penetrate the void. His every movement affected heaven and earth, time and space. Countless corpses appeared in midair, rising and falling here, as if following his lead. "Great Emperor, where are you?" the giant black beast called out. It was about to die. After burning its own soul light, struggling until this moment could already be considered a miracle. It just didn't want to leave this world, wanting to see one more time. Only, it didn't expect that the one it waited for wasn't someone it was familiar with, but an enemy. Perhaps it might also be a man turned dark. This middle-aged man coldly and emotionlessly lowered his head to look at it. Then, he slowly raised a hand, about to grab it, cold and emotionless, his killing intent boundless. Dang. At this moment, the broken bell moved, rumbling on its own. A bell wave was incomparably dazzling, as if it could rewrite heaven's will, sever the past and present. The bell wave turned into ripples, striking into the man's body. He suddenly trembled, and in a split second, his movements stiffened. Moreover, a gentle bell wave also rushed into the giant black beast's body, prolonging its life. At this moment, the black beast's remnant soul fire that was about to be extinguished temporarily stopped, preserving its last breath. Moreover, it raised its head with difficulty and looked at that man. What kind of person was this? His eyes actually carried a deep purple color, deep and sinister and terrifying. It's not darkness, it shouldn't be dark transformation, but there's still a big problem. It trembled, because apart from dark energy and dark matter, there were other things. Back then, they encountered too many strange things. Dang. The broken bell shook again, and the blood-colored lightning that filled the sky collapsed. The boundless darkness was also torn apart, and the bell wave cleansed the world. And the most astonishing thing was that the deep purple color in this middle-aged man's eyes was receding, and his body was violently swaying, as if his corporeal body was resisting something. There was clearly still a wave of decaying aura that hadn't completely recovered, but this body seemed to have a spirit, resisting, blocking something. The broken bell shook again, and at the final moment, it even turned into a streak of light, connecting with that middle-aged man. The two merged together, continuously rumbling. At this time, the middle-aged man retracted the large hand that reached out, not taking the last bit of the giant black beast's remnant soul. Moreover, he slowly raised his hand, grabbing towards his own heart. A wave of black blood flowed out, and then an expanse of purple blood carrying blue light splashed out. Chi! A wave of heaven-destroying and earth-annihilating aura appeared. The heavens exploded, all because of this middle-aged man's movements. His body seemed to have a type of instinct, obliterating something that didn't belong to him. In that instant, that hand shone. Was this the reappearance of the past divine might? When the giant black beast saw this, hot tears tumbled down, as if it returned to those glorious times. The pale white palm suddenly shook, and a terrifying wave of green smoke came out from the man's body, accompanied by a strange and terrifying cry. It was as if a creature had fallen, something had been obliterated and obliterated. In the end, this man slowly fell down again. With his back towards the giant black beast, he laid down on the broken bell that was gradually calming down. A wave of decaying aura spread out once more. The fragrance that came from the middle-aged man's body after absorbing the three-life medicine completely disappeared. The giant black beast was in great grief. It knew that it had failed this time, and it couldn't save this middle-aged man. But soon, a strand of hope appeared in its despair, and it spoke with a trembling voice. In the past, it was recorded that the body and soul are equally important. The body might also have some type of primitive instinct that can replace the soul and control the true self. Just now, did you return? However, no one responded to it. At this time, it really couldn't hold on anymore. The life force that the broken bell gave it was disappearing, and the remaining soul light was fading away. However, the broken bell shook again, and that man's body was also trembling. It was unknown whether it was the bell's waves or if he was moving on his own. At the same time, the broken bell shone and resonated with that man. Both of them were trembling, and it was hard to say whether it was this weapon of the past that was moving or that man's corpse was pulsating on its own. In the end, the bell rang in a long and drawn-out manner. That man's body soared with flames as if he was tempering something. A drop of liquid slowly floated up. My aura? My soul-light energy? The giant black beast was so shocked before its death that it murmured softly with a trembling voice. That drop of liquid silently entered its mouth and disappeared within its body. It felt its own burning soul light and the source matter that it had smelted out return. Not only that, but there was also a drop of medicinal liquid that entered its body, nourishing its body that had long withered and was about to turn into dust. That was the three-life medicine. It had already poured it into this man's mouth, and it was worried that the amount of medicine wasn't enough. But now it actually returned some to it. Is that you? The broken bell still has a spirit and you're helping me? The giant black beast was saved at the final juncture on the verge of death. It looked at the broken bell suspiciously. After a soft chime, the broken bell fell silent. However, the giant black beast realized that the man's corpse had actually moved a few times. Monarch! It yelled, and tears streamed down its face. It felt that the monarch horoscope had returned. It's you must have returned. But why haven't you awakened yet? Come back to life. It shook the body that was emitting a rotten aura. You saved me, so you didn't let me die like this. Or could it be that this is just your body's instincts protecting me again? The giant black beast cried. It knew that no matter what, it had failed this time. This man couldn't truly return to the world. However, at the moment of despair, its heart was also filled with great waves. The monarch horoscope seemed to have reappeared, or perhaps this body still contained the instinct of a monarch. This was hope. It firmly believed that one day, this man would reappear and return. This is only the three-life medicine, not the three-life monarch medicine. It seems like the age and the material are not enough this time. I must find the three-life monarch medicine. Upon saying this, it rose to its feet and projected its voice into the dilapidated universe where Chu Feng was at. I'll give you a mission. Otherwise, I'll curse you for the rest of your life. Chu Feng was in the middle of searching and exploring when he heard the voice. He raised his head and saw that the black beast had appeared once again. It had become clear. However, what was it saying? It was giving him a mission, or else it would curse him. What the hell, this unlucky black beast was asking him to do some work, and it was threatening him like that. Why should I? He mumbled. If you don't do it, you'll suffer. The giant black beast revealed a mouthful of incomplete yet white teeth. Are you a dog, turning against me just like that? Chu Feng wanted to say that, but he was shocked to discover that it was actually a giant black dog after taking a closer look. Following this, he shut his mouth. First, find me the three-life monarch medicine. First, was there a second one? Chu Feng looked at it from the corner of his eyes and said in a low voice. Thank you for reminding me. There is indeed a second one. The giant black dog shook its head and said with its paws behind its back. F***ck. Chu Feng cursed silently, and wanted to curse. I'll give you a clue. Go find the female monarch. At this moment, the giant black dog was extremely solemn, as if he was talking about a major event that could change the history of this world. Suddenly, the giant black dog felt that the man beside him seemed to move again. What was going on? Was there a strange change? Its hair stood on end. Then, it immediately activated a certain spatial coordinate, and vaguely saw an ancient bronze coffin floating in the air. "Suppress evil!" it exclaimed softly, and then shouted loudly. "You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."